Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the MHA What If with another fanfiction. This is the move of What If Deku helped Bakugou uncover the truth? All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Beep beep beep. Bakugou groaned as he rolled over and slammed his hand down on his alarm clock, shutting it off. It's 5 a.m., the time he wakes up every morning. Bakugou sits up, sparking his hands to burn off the buildup of nitroglycerin. Once his hands are safe, he rubs the exhaustion out of his face. His fluffy blonde hair is damp and stuck to his forehead from the cold sweats of a nightmare-plagued sleep. He pulls his tired body out of bed, turning on his desk lamp in a shift motion. It's cold in his dorm room. Cold, clean, and quiet, just how he likes it. Bakugou does his morning stretches. He finds that warming up his body is a good way to start his day. He warms up and he works out the tension in his body from his nightmares he's often too tired to remember come morning. It's not his first nightmare and it certainly won't be his last. After his stretches, he changes into his black joggers and a black t-shirt. He grabs his running shoes and jogs downstairs to push in a morning run before classes. His run is quiet. He's not thinking, he's feeling. His mind is blank. He only feels the cool, brisk morning. He only feels his heart beating. He only feels his feet pound on the pavement with each rhythmic step. He's not thinking about anything. He's disconnected from his emotions. Numb, you might say, but he likes to be numb. He'd rather not think, rather not feel, than to constantly feel anxious and angry. When he gets back to the dorms from his run, it's 6, he grabs a shower, careful to not start thinking. He doesn't want to feel. He wants to stay disconnected as long as possible. After his shower, he pulls on his school uniform, forgetting to put on his tie. In reality, he can't handle wearing anything around his neck. It reminds him too much of the sludge villain and the hag. He goes back downstairs to get breakfast. A few of his classmates have emerged as well. Bakugou pays them no attention. He goes to the kitchen to make himself breakfast. He decides on eggs with a simple salad. He's cutting up the cucumbers, spinach, kale, and carrots when Kirishima joins him in the kitchen. "Good morning, bro." Kirishima greets him tiredly. He's rubbing his eyes, trying to wake up. Bakugou just grunts in response. He's still not used to people talking to him so nicely. That's a healthy breakfast, dude," Kirishima comments. Bakugou eyes him carefully. "We're athletes, dipshit. It's very important to eat balanced and healthy meals." Bakugou explains in his normal hiss. Kirishima smiles brightly. Bakugou doesn't understand why. "You're so manly, man. I think I'll follow your direction and have what you are having," Kirishima declares. Bakugou can't help but heat up from Kirishima's simple compliment. Bakugou quickly turns away and growls out a response. After breakfast, Kirishima and Bakugou walk to class. The rest of the self-proclaimed Baku squad is a few paces behind the pair, joking and laughing. Kirishima has his arm draped across Bakugou's shoulders as he's explaining the latest episode of whatever show he's watching. Bakugou isn't really interested in the show, but Kirishima is determined to talk about it. Classes go fine. Bakugou makes his normal snaps at his classmates. He's in a relatively good mood today, so he isn't so annoyed by the little green bug that sits behind him and mumbles creepily. Training went great. Bakugou won all his fights and got in a perfect workout. A full-body workout plus extra cardio. After school, he helps the idiots Kaminari, Siro, Mina, and Kirishima study in the common room. Then there's dinner at 5. Bakugou cooks for everyone. Somehow they convinced him to make pork cutlet bowls and he somehow accepted. They are sitting down eating. Everyone is chatting with each other. Bakugou's just mindlessly eating as he half-heartedly listens to his squad. Kaminari is trying to balance a plate on his forehead when Bakugou's phone rings. The ring breaks Kaminari's concentration and the plate falls, crashing down to the floor, breaking into a million pieces. The sound of the dish breaking on the linoleum makes Bakugou flinch. He isn't entirely sure why he flinched. Well, he knows, too many times he's had dishes thrown towards him in a fit of rage. Too many times he's accidentally broken a dish, and that resulted in him finding himself in a puddle of pain on the floor. Bakugou couldn't take his eyes off the broken dish. His mind was trying to bring up some unpleasant memories that he's been trying to forget his entire life. What snaps him out is Kirishima. "Dude, your phone," Kirishima said as he playfully nudges Bakugou's arm. Bakugou quickly throws on a harsh glare and snarls as he reaches for his phone. It's probably just a telemarketer, Bakugou thinks as he opens his phone. Instead, it's his mother. Bakugou's heart dropped. He hated when his mother called him. His heart started racing as he stood up to answer the call. What did he do wrong this time? Why is she calling? Did she see his grades? Is there something wrong with them? Did the school complain to her about his aggressive behavior? What happened? Why is she calling? What did he do wrong? Bakugou steps away from the table and answers the phone. He honestly can't tell if he is breathing. His nerves are firing and his ears are preparing for Mitsuki's loud and harsh yelling. His mind is running a million miles an hour, trying to figure out what he did to PSS her off enough for her to call him. Brat. Katsuki. Mitsuki's cold voice rang through the phone and through Bakugou's ears. She's calm. Quiet. Oh no. I. Did she just stutter? What the F dash? I need you to come home. Why the F would I do that? It's your father. Need you to come home. It's your father. What? It's your father. Come home. Bakugou knew he had to go back home. He knew his mother wouldn't have asked him to come home if it wasn't serious. And he knew that this time he wasn't in trouble. Something was wrong with his father. Something serious. Something bad. Mitsuki wouldn't explain what was going on through the phone. She's never been good at communicating, especially when she's upset and/or stressed. So Bakugou had to go home and see things for himself. Normally, Bakugou wouldn't have trouble going back home. He was always prepared, but things are different now. He hasn't been home in months. He spent all his time at the dorms. When weekends come, usually he would stay there instead of heading home. Sometimes he went home with either Kirishima, Mina, Kaminari, or Siro. And when holidays came, he was at the dorms, most often alone because his classmates went back home. He didn't mind being alone on the holidays. It was far better than being home for the holidays. One holiday there was a present left outside his dorm room. Bakugou knew Mr. Aizawa had put it there, and though he'll never admit it outwardly, he appreciated it so much. He knew Mr. Aizawa knew why he stayed at school for the holidays. Though the tired teacher definitely didn't know the extent of what happened behind closed doors in the Bakugou residence, he knew it was unforgiving. Bakugou couldn't stop thinking as he prepared to head home for the weekend. He got the call to come home Thursday evening. He would head home Friday, right after school. He couldn't stop worrying. Couldn't stop thinking the worst. Was this a trap? What's wrong with his father? How serious is this? His nights were more restless than ever. He spent his nights trembling in his bed, staring at his ceiling as his mind ran through every and all possibilities that could happen when he got home. He couldn't shut his brain off. He couldn't even keep his hands steady during the day. And his quirk was harder to control as his nerves were constantly firing from the suffocating anxiety. Everything was going wrong and he wasn't even home yet. Friday classes ended and the heavy weight on Bakugou's shoulders almost made him crumble. He was out of time. There was no more avoiding reality. He was leaving UA to go home. When he filed the paperwork to be approved for heading home, Mr. Aizawa had questioned him. Bakugou lied, saying it was an important anniversary. Mr. Aizawa didn't seem convinced, but he knew better than to push the blonde harder for answers. Bakugou always strived for honesty, but when he did lie, there was always a reason and there was no knowing the truth. Bakugou skipped his after-school training and went straight to his dorm. He grabbed his already packed bag and headed to the train station. His bag didn't have much in it. Just his phone charger, some extra outfits, a first aid kit, and his wallet. He said his goodbyes to his classmates. They all seemed shocked to see him leave. They tried to get answers, but Bakugou just vaguely explained that it was an important anniversary and he'll be back Monday. He didn't let them see how absolutely terrified he was to return. He spent 15 minutes in his dorm just breathing to stop him from trembling and thinking. He composed himself and walked out, in his normal grumpy aggressive manner. He had put his headphones on and some music in hopes to drown out the world and the screaming voices in his head. He had changed out of his school uniform and into some black ripped skinny jeans, a loose light gray athletic shirt, and a black beanie in the hope of not get recognized. He hated getting stared at on the train or any time he was in public. It was always the same. The subtle glares, the harsh whispers, the almost fearful glances. People either were mad at him or weary of him. Part of him liked that everyone was always avoiding him, that meant no one was going to hurt him. The other part of him just felt alone. He hated that his existence sparked fear and hate. He hated how very few people, if truly any, found him heroic. He hated how the public viewed him as a villain. As a terrible, demonic, cruel, arrogant dude who's not worth saving. He hated how they all knew he's weak. And he hated how they hated his weakness but never did a DMN thing to make him stronger. His weakness always caused trouble, for everyone. And instead of people supporting him, they pushed him down and yelled at him for being weak. For causing trouble. For not being strong enough. They blamed him for everything. Surely it was all his fault. How could he have been so weak to get caught? How could he have caused so much destruction when he should have been strong enough to escape the villain's grasp? How could he ever aspire to be a hero? He's so weak he can't even save himself. Not that he even wanted support. He was fine. He wasn't Deku. He didn't need anyone to help him. He was going to become the #1 hero all by himself. He was going to prove to everyone that he wasn't weak. He didn't need the public to like him. He didn't need anyone to like him. He just needed himself. Surely he was enough. If not enough for others, then for himself. He had to be enough because he's all he has. If he isn't worth a hero, then he'll be his own. The train station was busy, but he blended in with the crowd. He stood in the back of the train, looking out the window with his music blaring in his ears. He was focusing on breathing. He hated being around so many people. He needed to stay calm. He couldn't afford to blow up because he was nervous. His mind was numb and clouded by the crippling social anxiety. He could never really think straight when surrounded by so many threats people. But this hiccup was currently in his favor. If he was thinking straight, he would be panicking, and he absolutely hated people seeing him in a vulnerable state, such as complete panic. He mindlessly got off the train at his stop. He had rode this train too many times to count. He knew this routine like the back of his hand. He followed the signs to leave the train station. He could take a taxi to his house, but he'd rather walk. It was only a few miles and he still wasn't ready to return home. He started his walk home. He's been taking this trail since he started school. His parents rarely drove him to school, so it was his responsibility to get to and from school. His mind was still numb and disconnected when he passed a familiar alley. His body slowed to a stop in memory. Bakugou snapped out of his music when he realized he stopped. His body was screaming as it remembered the stupid sludge villain. He suddenly felt like he couldn't breathe. Logically, he knew there wasn't sludge forcefully shoving itself down his spasming throat as a disembodied voice muttered how it was going to take over his body and destroy everything. But the memory of that day, that moment, was still fresh in the blonde's mind. Bakugou forced himself to keep moving, whispering to himself that the sludge villain was captured and nothing was going to jump out and grab him. Bakugou hated the phantom feeling of sludge around him. No matter how hard he scrubbed himself in the shower, or how much he burned his skin with his quirk, he could never dig out the feeling from his skin. It was a terrible burden. A terrible feeling from a terrible situation. He couldn't even comfort himself with the thought that he got saved from his favorite hero. Because All Might only stepped in after Deku did. For the longest time, Bakugou thought it was just a coincidence that All Might saved him after Deku ran towards him. Until his mother had pointed out from the video that Bakugou refused to watch, that All Might was there, watching in his skeleton form. At first, Bakugou thought that All Might didn't think he was worth saving. A painful realization that the one person Bakugou thought would actually save him wouldn't have. But he later learned all about All Might's time limit and how weak he was back then. But that still didn't comfort him. Because that day, All Might chose twice to use his very limited power to save Deku. Bakugou knew it was petty to be jealous of Deku. He'd never admit it to anyone, not even really to himself, that he was jealous. But it was hard not to be. Deku had it all. A loving mother. The ability to be weak and emotional and have no one chastise him for it. A personality that everyone loved. And he was deemed worth saving. Deku had everything handed to him. He never really had to prove himself worthy. He had his quirk handed to him. Guidance, support, and love all given to him. He could fail over and over again, and yet people still loved and supported him. They helped him. They respected him. About him. He could make mistakes and they were never held against him. Deku had it all. Bakugou hated that Deku was chosen by their childhood hero and Bakugou was left behind to fend for himself. But he wasn't going to let that discourage him. He was going to become the best DMN hero. He didn't care that Deku was the chosen one. Bakugou continued his walk home. Ironically, he took the same path he did the day the sludge villain attacked. As he tried not to focus on the phantom feeling of the DMN sludge, he remembered what happened when he got home that day. He stomped his entire way home at a faster pace than normal. After escaping the pro heroes that stood back and watched him struggle and defend Deku, he was finally alone. He threw open his front door, knowing his parents weren't home. He stomped upstairs to the bathroom, quickly stripping and jumping in the shower. He already threw up twice on the way home. He scrubbed himself clean, desperately trying to get the feeling of sludge off of him. It didn't work, so he cried. He sobbed and screamed loud, yet no one was around to hear him. After he finished his shower, he got dressed. His body was littered with bruises from his mother. At this point in time, he was never without a bruise. He climbed into bed and hoped to fall asleep before he fell apart. He barely registered his parents coming home. After a few hours, he wakes up to his mother stomping her way up the stairs to his room. She threw open the door. Bakugou couldn't register what she was screaming at him. She's angry. She was probably watching the evening news and found out what happened hours before. Bakugou felt her drag him out of bed. He felt every slap, hit, punch, and kick she threw at him. He vaguely heard her screaming how this was all his fault, how if he hadn't been so dim and weak this never would have happened. That she hated him and was so disappointed, no disgusted by him and his ability to ruin everything. He's the worst child ever. He's AF up who'll never amount to anything. This is all his fault. He's too weak. The same insults she tells him every day. The same unamused, unimpressed, disinterested glare she sends him every day. The same harsh hits to the head that almost always escalate to full-blown beatings. The same justified reasons why she hurts him. It's always his fault. It's what he deserves for being so weak. A beating is the only thing he was worth. It's always the same with her. He lets her down, she beats him up. She beats him up, he works harder to be better. It's a never-ending cycle of trying to prove that he is worth more than a beating and her always changing the expectations and rules so he fails to impress her. He knows deep down that he'll never impress her, but all he can do is try. However, the one person he can impress is his father. After each beating, rage fit, or lecture that was given to him at top volume, his father would apologize and try to comfort him. It was more simple when Bakugou was younger. He'll come home with a proud smile and hand his report card to his parents. Mitsuki would yell at him for getting an A, and not an A+. Then Masaru would sneak him a little high five and an attaboy. Sometimes Mitsuki would catch Masaru praising Katsuki and that always started a fight between them. Why are you praising the brat? He'll never learn to do better with you babying him. Mitsuki would yell. He's trying his best, that's got to account for something. Masaru would say meekly. No, ITF doesn't. Mitsuki would retaliate quickly. Bakugou hated when his parents fought, so he stopped accepting his father's praise. He stopped spending time with his father. He stopped waiting in the living room, watching out the window eagerly for his father's arrival to greet him with a smile and a report of his day. He would avoid both of his parents. He didn't want his father to get yelled at by his mother because of something he did, so he stopped being around his father. He longed too, but it was for the better. Sometimes, however, there were times when Mitsuki went out leaving the two alone together. Masaru would find Katsuki, who usually hid in his room, and they would do something together. Those rare moments were Katsuki's fondest memories. Those were when he felt most cared about. Those were when Masaru would teach him things he'd remember forever. They were always spoiled by Mitsuki's return, but the short moments were just enough to make Katsuki's week. Bakugou missed those moments. In middle school, those moments stopped altogether. Whenever Mitsuki wasn't around, neither was Katsuki. He spent most of his time out at the arcade or at the park or just out. And when he was home, he was working, cleaning, studying, exercising. And if Masaru attempted to spend time with Katsuki, he was stopped with a harsh snap and an insult. Bakugou resented his father. He wished that Masaru would grow a pair and step up to Mitsuki. To protect Katsuki. To stop the beatings, the yelling, and the insults that always felt like knives in his heart. But the passive man just hid away and waited until Mitsuki grew tired. Sometimes he would come out and try to help patch up Katsuki, but Katsuki always lashed out at him and locked himself away, refusing help. Bakugou found himself on his street. His house was almost in view. Bakugou was practically vibrating with anxiety. He spent a lot of his time hating both his parents. And now they needed him back. That was foreign to Bakugou. He knew that only meant something terrible. He wasn't sure if he really wanted to find out, but he didn't have a choice. He was going home. That realization made him very nauseous. As soon as he spotted his brown house, he felt the bile rising up. He swallowed it down. Too many memories were flashing in his mind to the point he could basically see his younger self, at different stages, in front of him like a sick movie. Bakugou managed to find the courage to approach his house. He crept down the sidewalk. With every step towards the house that haunted him, a growing weight was trying to pull him to the center of the earth. He wanted so much to just turn heel and bolt away. He wanted to fly away and forget he had parents, forget everything. But he kept marching forward. On the sidewalk he and his childhood friends used to ride down on their bikes and skateboards and rollerblades. Over the cracks in the concrete that made him fall down and scrape his knees. Towards the driveway he used to run down when his mother was yelling and threatening him if he stayed a second longer in her sight. Past the little alleyway he used to walk down towards another alleyway to hide away behind a dumpster until he was allowed back inside. Through a little garden, one of his neighbors created and let all the neighborhood kids pick flowers. Those same flowers that somehow upset his mother enough to lock him away in the closet. He got to his house. He carefully, silently, opened the gate and walked through. He couldn't bear to look up at his house. He just focused on the little stone walkway. He could have sworn he saw the slightest stain of his blood from the number of times he's been thrown down against the stones when he was younger. It was freaky how much everything looked the same as it did 10 years ago. The only thing that was different was the grass desperately needed to be cut, and Mitsuki had a different car from when she rage crashed the last one. Bakugou silently walked up the porch steps. He remembered the exact places not to step so the wood wouldn't creak. The porch had a few bags of trash that needed to go out to the bin, and a pile of today's mail. Bakugou carefully picked up the mail. He debated on knocking. Should he knock? This was his home also, yet he knows he's not welcomed. He compromised and knocks as he walks in, only to be met with a familiar stale, suffocatingly stiff atmosphere that almost screamed, "Run! Turn back! Danger!" Or maybe that was just his own body trying to warn him. For what's to come. He hates this. He hates being here. He hates the overwhelming dread twisting in his stomach. He hates the feeling of his oncoming panic attack. He hates that the only thing he can feel is his heart hammering in his chest, his lungs screaming at him to breathe when he just can't, an unsettling numbing cold running through his entire body in one heavy shiver, and the fear. The fear was everywhere and he hated it. It was locked in his jaw, silencing him. It sealed his throat, preventing oxygen from filling his lungs. It was in his shoulders, his neck, strangling him, pulling him down. It was in his legs, already weak and wobbling. They were begging to collapse or to run, he wasn't sure which one. It was in his stomach and in his chest. He felt like he was on a roller coaster that was leading him towards his demise. The ice-cold terror was FANG everywhere and he hated it. He hated how weak it made him. How completely useless it rendered him. He could only see black and white spots, like pixel static. He could only hear loud ringing in his ears as blood rushed through his head. His hands were cold, but they were sweating. The nitroglycerin was building up, but the blinding terror snuffed out the spark that ignited the bright explosions. He felt so lightheaded and disorientated that he wasn't sure if he was still standing or floating in a void. He didn't know which way up was or what was going on around him. He felt so disconnected from everything, yet so agonizingly aware. It was all overwhelming. Bakugou honestly didn't know how long he'd been standing in the entrance. He stepped in and his brain and body exploded in terror. It wasn't the first time he reacted like this. It wasn't even the 20th time. When he finally caught his breath and came back into his senses, he was surprised that he was, in fact, still standing. He quickly blinked away the tears that threatened to spill. He rolled his shoulders a few times in a sad attempt to relieve the tension. It didn't work. He moved a little just to get used to being in his body. But, like always, he never truly felt like himself when he was here. He felt like he was watching himself through windows that were his own eyes. He always felt detached and trapped in his own mind. It was a bizarre feeling that always settled ugly deep inside Bakugou. Bakugou placed his bag on the landing of the stairs. The dark hardwood stairs were to the left of the door. They turned and went upstairs towards the bedrooms. Bakugou studied the steps. He remembered when he would walk down them with such a calculated concentration to carefully not creak the wood and wake up his parents. His eyes automatically found the dents, marks, and scratches on the walls, floors, and railing. Some of them were a decade old, others only 6 months. Bakugou didn't remember the exact moment in time when each mark was made, but he knew the story behind them. The small roundish dents were from the cups, bowls, and plates thrown at Katsuki as he bolted up the stairs to escape Mitsuki's rage. The scratch marks were from when Mitsuki would drag Katsuki upstairs to lock him in his room. Bakugou vaguely remembered the feeling of dozens of splinters and broken nails from grasping onto the cheap wood. The burn marks on the railings were from when Katsuki would hide behind the wooden posts as Mitsuki and Maru fought. He would get so angry that his hands would spark and smoke. He didn't mean to burn the posts, but Mitsuki didn't care if it was an accident or on purpose. Either way, he got punished. There was a random tapestry at the landing of the stairs. Behind it hid the full-body dent from when Katsuki was thrown into the wall. In front of the door was a little half-bathroom. There was also a cabinet with very little on it. No family pictures, no cute knickknacks, just a spider plant and an old miney sailboat. Bakugou never really looked through the drawers, so he didn't know what was inside. To the direct right of the door was a coat rack and shoe rack. Bakugou kept on his shoes and coat in case he needed to make a quick breakaway. The entrance was dim like always. It smelled of old cinnamon and faint stale wine. The smell made Bakugou GG. Bakugou turned and walked into the living room. He finally heard shuffling coming from the kitchen. He also heard beeping from a monitor. That was a foreign sound. It made something strange bubble inside Bakugou. The living room was dark and cold. The whole house was dark. Dark hardwood and dark walls. And the place wasn't decorated brightly and colorful. It was always dim and edgy. It wasn't welcoming, but somehow intimidating. It never once felt like a family-friendly home. There was a light gray couch against the far wall. A framed picture of a random sunset hung above the couch. There was a love seat in the window that looked out to the front yard and driveway. The window that Katsuki used to sit at and look out. There were 2 plants on either side of the love seat. There was a little coffee table in the middle of the floor. It was new. The last one was broken under Katsuki's weight from when he fell on it. In his defense, he was pushed down. He still has the scar from when a piece of the wood splintered off and embedded itself in his arm. The scar was faint, very faint. You couldn't see it unless you really pointed it out. Bakugou guessed that was a plus to having a quirk that always left his skin perfect. He didn't really scar. He did, but the wounds healed fast and almost perfectly. It took a lot to leave a permanent mark. There was an area rug on the floor that caught Bakugou's eyes. It was also new. It was a step up from the one he remembered. It was stained in wine. More like his own blood. Though it was stained with wine, it was mostly stained with blood. And no matter how much he cleaned the rug, he could never lift the stains. The rug hid the dents and scratches and burns that littered the floor. There was a TV on the wall opposite the couch. There was also a bookshelf that held movies and books. An old rocking chair in front of the shelf. Bakugou stepped more into the room. Everything was the same. Carefully placed pictures on the walls to hide the dents and marks from Mitsuki's fits. Always dim and dull, stiff and rigid. There was no relaxing here. What caught Bakugou's attention was the dining room. Instead of a table and chairs, there was a hospital-grade bed with a frail figure laying down. There were shelves up high that contained little sculptures and figures and books. They were coated in years of dust, so they went unnoticed. The window over the now bed was stained glass. When the sun hit it just right, the whole dining room and living room would erupt in appealing hues. It was appealing. The only part that actually comforted Bakugou at times. Even though he spent 16 years in this house, he rarely got to experience the phenomenon that occurred almost every day. He was always chased away before the sun hit the window, either by Mitsuki's presence or his own fear. Just as Bakugou laid eyes on his father, Mitsuki came into the room from the kitchen. She was holding 2 cups of tea. Bakugou swallowed hard. His throat was burning, his mouth dry, his whole body started blaring alarms. Screaming at him to run. Telling him that he's going to get hurt. Reminding him of all the times he was hurt. Bakugou swallowed hard again, gaining down the terror and trembles. He was standing strong. If he can spit in villains' faces, he can stay composed in front of his mother. Though he was nervous. She was holding rear boiling projectiles that she could easily hurl at him. But there was something off with his mother. He almost dropped his jaw at the sight of her. She was scared, guilty, stressed, nervous, and clearly upset. Bakugou had never seen his mother so emotional. He only ever saw her angry or disinterested. Bakugou relaxed just slightly. His mother was angry at him or wanting to kill him at the moment. Brat. Mitsuki said, sounding civil. She was yelling, and Bakugou detected no hidden venom dripping from her words. Took you long enough. Mitsuki said, turning away from him and setting 1 cup of tea on the table within Masaru's reach. Bakugou took time to examine his father. He was hooked up to an oxygen tank, a heart monitor, and 4. Bakugou couldn't see his face from across the room, but he had a feeling it was going to look sick and pale. There was a table at the bed's right that held a pile of prescription bottles and hospital-issued stuff. Bakugou didn't really know much about what was surrounding his father. It just looked like a homemade hospital room. Suddenly the realization hit Bakugou like a truck. This was not a sign of someone getting better. This was a deathbed. What the hell is wrong with him? Masaru. Mitsuki whispered as she gently shook Masaru to wake him up. It didn't take long for Masaru to wake up. He lifted his head and smiled as he spotted Katsuki. Katsuki, Masaru croaked out. The sound of his father's bread breathing made Bakugou sick. The man before him sounded tired. Bakugou suddenly couldn't move. He just wanted to run away and pretend everything was normal and fine. He honestly couldn't believe this was happening. This felt like he walked into the cancer ward of a hospital. Which he did once. It was an accident. He broke his arm when he was 6 and was high on pain meds and decided to take a walk. He slipped out of his room and away from his father and the nurses and doctors. He found himself in the cancer ward. He spotted a bunch of old people withering away in their beds. Just the look of them, and Katsuki knew they were dying. Katsuki started weeping. He was sobbing because he was lost, and he made the connection that these people were dying. He didn't want to die, and especially not wasting away in a bed, waiting for the moment you just croak. A nurse eventually found him and took him back to his room. He started asking questions about death and what was wrong with the people. That made the adults uncomfortable. How do you explain such a dark thing to a 6-year-old without breaking their hearts? They ended up just giving him a lollipop and distracting him from what he witnessed. Bakugou hated the idea of just wasting away. He thought that was a dumb way to die. He always believed that death should be sudden and meaningful. Like a sacrifice. Like a hero dying to save the day. Now he knew that not everyone dies the way heroes do, but he also knew he was going to die a hero. He also hated seeing his father like this. He hated everything about this. Brat, he say something. Mitsuki snapped, still not as angry as she used to be. Bakugou snapped out of his mind. His parents were just looking at him. Bakugou couldn't speak. He didn't know what to do. He felt another panic attack coming on. He also felt his nails burying themselves into his left wrist. An ungrateful piece of sheet dash, Mitsuki hissed as she started towards Bakugou. Bakugou panicked, but he couldn't move. If he moved 1 centimeter, his instincts would take over and he'll find himself sprinting down the street away from his parents. Mitsuki! Masaru's voice stopped both blondes from moving. He looked serious, stern, and frustrated. Bakugou only remembered seeing his father passive, nervous, and fretting. What? Mitsuki snapped harshly at her husband. He glared at her. Bakugou almost couldn't believe what was happening. Never in history had Masaru stood up against Mitsuki. But then again, never had Masaru been on his deathbed. We talked about this. Honey. Masaru explained. His voice was weak and tired, but still serious. Mitsuki sighed. She looked conflicted and guilty. I know, but this dumb big dash. Mitsuki was cut off again, this time by Masaru slowly raising his hand. Please. No. Fighting. Masaru breathed out. Mitsuki let out a defeated sigh. She turned towards Bakugou. Bakugou saw the burning rage in her eyes. She huffed and sat down on a chair that was to the left of the bed. Bakugou was confused. Katsuki. It's okay. Masaru said, waving his hand, gesturing for the teen to approach. Bakugou wanted to growl and snap back with an no, it's okay, stop treating me like a FNG baby. But instead, he just wrapped his arms around him tightly, trying to ground himself, and slowly approached. He was surprised that his mother didn't nitpick about how slow he walked over. She was always quick to comment about how he was existing wrong. It was always the never-ending game of second-guessing himself. Walk faster but not too fast. Pick up your feet, don't drag them, but don't look like you are thinking about walking. Stand up straight but don't look stuck up. Be confident but not arrogant. Know what you are doing but don't be a know-it-all. Always be ready to defend yourself but relax. Listen to others but don't let them tell you what to do. Stand out, fit in. He could never win no matter what. No matter how hard he tried, he wasn't good enough. He strived for perfection only to realize that it was a made-up concept used to hold him back. Upon approaching the bed, he realized just how sick his father really was. His skin was extremely pale. His eyes dropped into his face. He looked like he lost 50 pounds in 1 week. His skin had a few bruises. Bakugou wondered what they were from, but seeing how frail and weak his father was, a fly could land and leave a bruise. He looked washed out and completely exhausted, drained of any and all passion, and it was horrifying, seeing how corpse-like Masaru was. It was like someone took a piece of Bakugou and forcefully ripped it from Bakugou and then turned around and stabbed him in his core. It hurt. It really did. It felt like cancer, contaminating all of Bakugou's fondest memories of his father. It hurt like seeing All Might in his skeleton form for the first time, except 1,000 times more. This wasn't something that someone could recover from. Bakugou knew, before he even had the diagnosis in hand, that whatever was affecting his father before him was terminal. His father was going to die. Too soon. This is why Mitsuki called him back home. To witness his father painfully wither away, knowing there was absolutely nothing he could do about it. Nothing could stop this. Bakugou couldn't stop this. Bakugou couldn't save his father. It's strange. Being home. Bakugou can't seem to wrap his head around it. Maybe it's because his mind doesn't want to actually acknowledge that he's here, in fear of getting hurt. Although it hurts just being here. His skin crawling, desperate to leave this hell. His heart pounding, ready to fight or flee. His throat burning and his chest tight. His whole body feels tight. He feels this weight that has been thrown on him that he just can't seem to shake. It's slowly, painfully, pulling him down as his body crumbles under it and his own DMN weakness. It's strange seeing his parents look so defeated. His father looks tired, pale, and dull. His mother looks stressed, unconfident, and scared. All Bakugou can do is awkwardly stand towards the foot of his father's bed and blink as his parents try to have a conversation with him. He can't hear what they're saying. He can't connect with them or reality even. He just feels numb, lost. Lost on what to do and lost on how to feel. He can't move, can't think, can't understand anything. His mother is talking to him, and she is actively getting angrier and angrier, but he just couldn't seem to hear her. He needs to figure out what she is saying, but the words feel foreign, far away, and fuzzy. His mother's speaking, but all he can hear is different versions from different moments in time. He can't decipher what is actually being said currently, or what was already said. Are you even listening, brat? Are you even listening, brat? Mitsuki yelled as she pushed Katsuki down on the floor. She was waving around his report card, lecturing him on how he should have done better. His cheek stung from where she slapped him and his shoulder hurt from landing on it. Say something, Dimenit. Say something, Dimenit. Mitsuki screamed as she raised her right hand in a flash. Katsuki flinched, yet her palm made contact with the side of his face. It hurt, but what hurt more was being so confused. No matter what he did, it was never the right thing. If he did say something, he was talking back and being disrespectful, so he'd be punished, but if he didn't say something, it was him being scared and weak, so he got hit. No matter how hard he tried to guess what she wanted from him, he always failed. He would spend all his time analyzing her every move and action just to predict what was coming, but it never helped. He could defuse one bomb, but that just ignited 3 more. Mitsuki, please. Mitsuki, please. Masaru begged as he tried to stop Mitsuki from hitting or yelling at Katsuki. He would beg and plead for the violence to stop, to calm down Mitsuki, to de-escalate the situation, to negotiate punishments. He even tried to push his way between them, attempting to separate the two. But every disarming action ended with him caving and running away. Sometimes all it took was a harsh glare to get the timid man to bolt, other times it took loud yelling and cussing. But in the end, he admitted defeat and escaped to his room or even left the house entirely. Katsuki used to appreciate the efforts. His father was his hero, even though he never managed to save Katsuki, but at least he tried. He tried to stop it. He tried to keep the peace. He tried to calm everyone down. But then he stopped trying. He stopped attempting to save Katsuki. And that hurt more than any hit or cruel word his mother would spit at him. Because it meant that Katsuki was all alone and that everything she said was true. He wasn't worth saving. He deserved it. No one was going to help him. No one cared. No one loved him. Katsuki stopped thinking of him as his hero when Masaru stopped trying to save him. Masaru would send out 1 or 2 little pleas for Mitsuki to stop, and when she inevitably didn't, he left. It always stung more inside watching the only person who ever made an effort to help him walk away. That's why Katsuki decided to become the type of hero that never gives up when things are difficult. He'd never be that hero who doesn't even try. He'd never be that hero who stands by and watches a kid fight against a sludge villain that is forcefully invading him, waiting for someone better to come to the rescue because they are too scared to try. He'll be the best so he can save everyone no matter what challenges he is faced with. Katsuki! Mitsuki's voice finally registered through Bakugou's head, snapping him out of his stupor. What? Bakugou barely recognized that he said that. It sounded so small and fragile. He wanted to snap out a response to cover up the weak one he just gave, but he couldn't conjure up the energy or any other emotion to do so. Mitsuki just flicked her hands and stormed off to the kitchen. Bakugou flinched again when she moved so suddenly and stormed off. He flinched one last time when he heard the back door open and slam shut. Bakugou hated being so jumpy, but he didn't have the energy to hide it. Bakugou took a few deep breaths to settle his nerves, and he turned to his father. It's okay. Everything's okay. Masaru slurred out a little. He was tired, but his smile reappeared. It wasn't as bright as it used to be, but it was genuine. Everything doesn't look okay. Bakugou hissed in a numb mumble. Inside, Bakugou was drowning in emotions, but he couldn't express any of them. He couldn't express how looking at his father, lying there ghastly, hurt so much. He couldn't express how much he hated being home. He couldn't express how afraid he was. Afraid of the realization that he was going to lose his father soon. Afraid of being home. Afraid of his mother. Afraid of everything and nothing, all at once. Bakugou couldn't express anything. Masaru sighed, long and weakly. He waved Bakugou over to the chair as he struggled to sit up more. Bakugou walked over and sat down on the edge of the chair. Katsuki! Masaru said as he summoned enough energy to speak. How is school? He asked with a little smile. Bakugou glared hard. He hated small talk. He hated when people tried to avoid an issue by changing the subject. He especially hated when his parents used small talk to avoid major conversations. When they first started that, communication crumbled, and with it, basic relationship principles. Don't. Bakugou warned. Masaru sighed again. He didn't want to tell Katsuki about what was going on. Okay. Masaru nodded. He pointed at a small pile of papers sitting towards the left of Bakugou. Bakugou quickly grabbed them and held them out for his father. Masaru just shook his head and pointed to Bakugou, signaling for him to read them. Bakugou looked down at the papers. They were very official looking. A bunch of medical words and things he didn't understand upon just glancing at it. Before he could start to understand what the papers said, Mitsuki returned. The door didn't slam as she shut it, so Bakugou guessed she calmed down a bit. Move. Mitsuki snapped coldly. Bakugou shot up from the chair and returned to the foot of the bed. Mitsuki huffed as she sat down. Bakugou was still looking at the papers that made no sense. Bakugou voiced his confusion as he looked up at his parents. He didn't understand, and he was too tired to figure it out. Mitsuki just scoffed. It was clear she wanted to snap at him, but she was composing herself. I have somatic carcinoma, which basically means I have cancer in my entire body. Masaru explained. Mitsuki looked down at her lap. Bakugou's eyes widen. So, see cancer. Aren't there like treatments? Like chemo or surgery or radiation? Medications, supplements, quirk usage? Is there any fighting this? Bakugou asked desperately. He knew the answer, he just didn't want it to be true. Masaru and Mitsuki both sighed. Terminal. Masaru said sadly. Mitsuki was teary-eyed. It looked like she also didn't want it to be true. Is there anything we can do? Extraordinary measures to take? Experimental trials to get into? FING witch doctors. Bakugou snapped. He didn't want to sound angry, but he was scared and upset, and anger was the only thing that he knew how to express. No. Imminent Katsuki, can't you see? He's dying. There's no stopping this, no fixing him, no recovering. Mitsuki yelled as a few tears fell. She looked like she wanted to strangle someone. There has to be something. I thought cancer's been cured for like a decade. Bakugou said. Bakugou remembered learning about the cure for cancer in elementary school. It was a scientific breakthrough that everyone was thankful for. Not this cancer. There's nothing anyone can do. Geez, Katsuki, can't you see that? Why are you so dead set on making everyone miserable with your incompetence? Mitsuki continued to yell. Her anger was bubbling, threatening to boil over, and when that happened, Bakugou ends up beaten and bleeding. How the hell was I supposed to know any of this? One moment everything was fine, the next you're dumping a terminal cancer on me. Bakugou snapped. He was sick and tired of always being expected to know everything. This isn't something new, Katsuki. Mitsuki's voice cracked as a few sobs escaped. Please stop. Masaru coughed out. Mitsuki and Katsuki both looked over. Please. No fighting, no yelling, no blaming. Masaru pleaded tiredly. It was desperate and heartbreaking. Bakugou immediately stood down and dropped his glare. Mitsuki tried as well, but it was more forced. An awkward silence fell over the family. Wait, what do you mean this isn't something new? How long have you two known about this? Bakugou asked. Bakugou watched as both of his parents' faces fell. Bakugou realized he caught them in something they were keeping from Katsuki. We've known. For little over a year. Masaru admitted quietly. Bakugou dropped his jaw. You've known that you were dying. And you are just now telling me? Bakugou clarified. Masaru nodded. Bakugou couldn't believe this. Why didn't you tell me sooner? How long do you have left? He pushed. Don't be so insensitive, brat. Mitsuki piped up but was quickly shut down with a glare from Masaru. We didn't want to worry you, Katsuki. Masaru said with a nervous smile. You're my father. I should have the right to know when you are dying. When were you going to tell me? When you're effing dead. What the F dash? Bakugou growled. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Masaru said as he looked down at his lap. He looked like he was going to cry. Now Bakugou felt bad. This isn't about him. Bakugou mentally groaned. He hated this all so much. How long do you have? Bakugou asked quieter. Maybe 5 months. Masaru said. He looked guilty. Bakugou didn't understand why. Bakugou sighed. He didn't want to hear this. He didn't want to be here. He didn't want this to happen. Bakugou put his hands on his head to help him breathe. He looked around, trying to understand everything. He hated asking questions and upsetting his parents. There were too many questions, though. So what now? What do you want me to do? Summer break is 3 weeks away. I'm sure Aizawa and Nizu would allow me to come home early given the situation. I can get a summer job or something just to bring in some more money. Or I can stay home and take care of you as mom goes to work and stuff. Whatever you need, I'll do it. Bakugou said after a long minute. He can't save his father, but he can be there for him. Masaru looked so relieved and grateful. Demon it Katsuki. Why the F are you making this all about you? This isn't about you. We don't need you. I can take care of him myself. Mitsuki snapped. Bakugou was so confused. He thought that they were finally going to settle down and unite. He didn't understand why she was freaking out so much. He didn't understand what he did wrong this time. Wasn't he being selfless? Wasn't that a good thing? He was so confused. Clearly you can't take care of him or anything. You can't handle this pressure. You're practically falling apart right now. So what the F are you going to do when you can't even take care of yourself? He hit him and tell him how much you hate him. Bakugou snapped back. He wasn't even thinking about what he was saying. Bakugou regretted what he said, even though it was true, the moment it left his mouth. The look on his mother's face seethed pure unbridled rage. The F you just say to me? Mitsuki snapped in a low venomous hiss. Bakugou gulped but stayed strong. He had bigger things to worry about than coddling his mother's fragile ego. You're in denial. You're avoiding the problem, thinking everything is fine. Everything is not fine. Dad's gonna die. There is nothing we can do except be there for him. But you are effingly incapable of comforting him because you can't even admit that he is effing dying. If you can't step the F up, then there's the F door. Bakugou yelled as he pointed to the front door. His outburst seemed to surprise Mitsuki and Masaru. Effing fine. Mitsuki scoffed as she stood up and stormed over to the door. Bakugou was not expecting her to just get up and leave. He thought she would wake up and realize what's been going on, and then do something, not just run away. Bakugou followed her to the door. You can't just leave. He's your husband. Bakugou yelled after her. I can't deal with this right now. Mitsuki barked as she put on her coat. You have to, you effing coward. Bakugou growled in surprise. That earned him a harsh slap to the face. Don't call me a coward, Katsuki. You don't understand anything. Mitsuki hissed icily. Bakugou was cupping his already throbbing face. Mitsuki rolled her eyes, grabbed her purse, and left, slamming the door behind her. She left. Left Bakugou wide-eyed and with a forming bruise. Left her bed-bound dying husband, who's in the other room. Bakugou let out a shaky breath. He walked back into what used to be the dining room but is now Masaru's hospital room. Masaru was waiting patiently for Katsuki with teary eyes. I'm sorry, Masaru said. He was genuinely upset. He hated when Mitsuki would hit Katsuki. Bakugou sunk into the chair next to the bed. I know. Bakugou whispered in a defeated sigh. I'm sorry too. I wouldn't have blown up like that if I'd known she would have just walked out. Bakugou admitted as he rubbed his forehead. His head hurt from the tension. His whole body ached from it. Barely 20 minutes here, and Bakugou's body and mind were taking a toll. That's not your fault, Katsuki. Don't worry, she'll come back. Masaru said, so certainly. You say that like she leaves all the time. Bakugou grumbled. Masaru's shifted uncomfortably. Bakugou eyed him. You've got to be shitting me. She just up and leaves like that when things get hard. Bakugou asked as he straightened up. Don't hold it against her. Things have been difficult, Masaru said meekly. Bakugou groaned loudly. She's your wife. For better or worse, yeah. In sickness and in health. She's supposed to be here with you. She doesn't get to walk away and take a break when you don't. Bakugou explained as he shook his head. He was tired. Just physically and mentally drained. I know. I don't like to see her upset. Masaru choked out as he started tearing up. Bakugou groaned again as he placed his face in his hands. All right. Well, while she's gone, let's catch me up on what's been going on these last few months, and then I'll make us some curry. How's that sound? Bakugou suggested. Masaru nodded as he wiped a few tears off his sunken face. Bakugou shook his head and looked down at the pile of papers he'd been holding. He was mentally preparing himself for what is coming. It was going to be a long evening. At least his mother wasn't here right now, that was a plus. He could finally get answers to his questions without her losing her sheet. Bakugou groaned one last time and settled. He was in for a long weekend. Bakugou picked up his bag and walked upstairs. 2 steps, then a right turn, then 9 more steps, then a right again and up 4 final steps. He had carefully placed where he was going to step to not creak the wood and wake his sleeping father. They had talked for hours about his condition until exhaustion finally took over and Masaru fell asleep. Stepping onto the 2nd floor of his home, Bakugou let out a quiet breath. He was tired. All he wanted to do was sleep, but he knew he wasn't going to rest well. He didn't want to be awake, but he also didn't want to lay in bed thinking about everything and nothing all at once until he passed out from exhaustion and then wake up a few hours later screaming and gasping as his palms unstably ignited. Bakugou looked up and down the hall. To his right was the library. It was a small light gray room, lined with shelves filled with books. There was a window that Bakugou used to crawl out of so he could sit on the roof that covered the front porch below. There was a door in the far right corner of the room that led up to the attic. Bakugou remembered the first and only time he went up into the attic. Mitsuki was angry at him for something he couldn't comprehend. She packed up all his toys and posters and such and dragged them into the attic. Bakugou had followed her up. Stepping into the attic scared Katsuki. There were boxes and old furniture everywhere. It was extremely dusty and smelled weird. There were 2 windows. One looked out to the street, the other to the backyard. The ceiling was slanted so you couldn't stand up straight until you were in the middle of the room. His mother tossed the last box of his things on the ground, causing Katsuki to flinch. Come here, brat. Mitsuki growled. Katsuki obeyed immediately. She was pushing some old boxes out of her way until she was at the wall. Katsuki watched as she pulled the wall panel back and exposed a crawl space. Katsuki's eyes widened in surprise. He found it cool that the wall hid a secret area. Grab that box. Mitsuki pointed to one of Katsuki's boxes. Katsuki did and pushed it towards her. She grabbed it and threw it into the dark space. They repeated that until all the boxes containing his favorite toys were behind the wall. Katsuki realized that he wasn't getting those back anytime soon and started crying. He liked his toys. Stop FING crying. Mitsuki yelled. But Katsuki didn't. He tried to get his toys. Mitsuki was livid. She pushed him into the area where his toys were. Katsuki hit the very dusty floor with a thud and a pained cry. He turned back to see his mother smiling maliciously. She pulled the wall panel back, locking Katsuki and his toys in the crawl space. Katsuki was silent as his tears fell. It was a weird feeling. The attic was warm from the summer afternoon. The crawl space was completely dark and smelled dusty and old. Katsuki listened as Mitsuki marched down the stairs and slammed the door shut, leaving Katsuki. After a few minutes of waiting for his mother to come back, he realized that she wasn't. He started to panic. He did not like being alone in the dark. His skin started crawling from the cobwebs that were there, either in his imagination or in reality. The dust was bothering his allergies and was practically suffocating him. He was cramped and hot. The longer he stayed in the attic, the warmer it got. He looked all around but only saw darkness. He didn't like not being able to see what was right in front of him. He started sobbing loudly. He screamed, cried, and begged to be let out. He tried to move the wall himself and escape, but his 5-year-old self wasn't strong enough. He thought about using his quick, but the little sparks would only end with him receiving a beating. Katsuki stayed in the attic for hours. He cried and screamed his lungs out until his voice was dry and broken. He ended up falling asleep. He woke up to the door opening and his father quickly coming up the stairs. Katsuki guessed he finally got home from work. Katsuki sat up from where he was leaning on a box. His sweaty clothes clung to him, his hair was matted, and he was coated in dirt. Katsuki felt miserable. The panel opened up, and Masaru quickly pulled Katsuki out. Masaru hugged him tightly and rubbed his tear-stained cheeks with his thumb. Katsuki hugged his father tightly. Masaru carried Katsuki downstairs and into the bathroom. Masaru gave Katsuki a cold shower, all while apologizing and comforting Katsuki. After Katsuki cooled down, he was brought to his room. Masaru gave him something to eat and then read to him until he fell asleep. Bakugou shivered from the memory. After that day, he never went into the attic. He also remembered waking up the day after and finding one of his toys tucked under his arm. An All Might plushie doll. It was his all-time favorite toy. Bakugou still had that toy. It was in his dorm room back at UA. Bakugou sighed and turned away from the library. His eyes caught on the broken door frame. There used to be a door, but Mitsuki broke it. The next door was the door to his parents' bedroom. The door always remained closed, and Bakugou was rarely ever in their room. He knew there was a bay window, a private bath, a king-sized bed, and a television. There was also a dresser and desk. He remembered the desk. His father was often there going over finances and other adult things. When Bakugou was younger, he would peek his head into their room when he knew, for sure, Mitsuki wasn't in there, to say hi. Katsuki finished climbing the stairs. His mother was in the kitchen, yelling over the phone at some sales associate. Katsuki had just gotten back from a sleepover with Izuku, and he didn't want to spoil his good mood by getting caught downstairs by his mother, so he hurried upstairs. Katsuki decided to let his father know he was home. He quietly opened his father's bedroom door and peeked his head in. His father was seated at a big desk located next to the bed. There was a dresser to the right of the door, and the bed was across from the door. His father turned around and smiled at Katsuki. Katsuki returned the smile. He was genuinely happy to see his father. His father stuck out his tongue playfully and squeezed his eyes shut. Katsuki returned the funny face. The silent greeting between the two was their own little joke. They never really got to talk without Mitsuki hearing and turning the attention on her, so the two silently created their own form of communication. A secret language that consisted of mostly funny faces that let them both understand what they were saying. Bakugou felt a few tears fall from the memory. He had forgotten most of those little silent moments he shared with his father. It used to make him feel better when he would randomly remember them, but now it hurt. It hurt because he wasn't going to make any more memories with his father soon. Ones that he'll cherish forever. Bakugou quickly wiped his face. He wasn't going to cry. Not from a stupid cheesy memory. His father didn't actually care about him, so those few fond moments he had with the man meant nothing. They were fake, meaningless, and he was better off without them. Right? Bakugou turned away from the closed door and walked down the hall. It was a short little hall. There was another door that shared the wall with his parents' bedroom. It used to be his bedroom. It was his nursery, then his toddler room, then his kid room. It was his room until he was 13 when things got really bad. He started getting more intense nightmares, and his quirk would go off unpredictably during the night. As he grew, his explosions grew. His mother couldn't take his constant exploding in the middle of the night, so she made him SW's rooms. The room was now a guest room. But the only guest who slept in that room was his father. And that only happened if he and Mitsuki got in a fight, and Mitsuki kicked him out of their bedroom. Bakugou's room was now at the end of the hall. Bakugou walked down the hall towards his bedroom. He passed the bathroom that he used. It was the only room on the left of the hall. A cramped bathroom with a shattered mirror, an old toilet that screamed when you flushed it, a sink with a broken faucet so you can't turn on the hot water, and an ugly blue tub. He opened his bedroom door and walked in. It was just as he left it, all those months ago. His sad twin mattress laid on the floor to the door's left, without a frame or anything, with his all-might duvet and matching pillows neatly covering it. His desk, which he found on the street with a free sign pinned to it, was pushed up against the wall opposite his mattress. It was completely barren because Bakugou took all his books and such with him. His wooden dresser was on the wall to the right of the door. It was also empty because he took what little clothes he had with him. Everything was barren and empty. No posters on the wall, no rugs, no photos, no artwork, no anything that could indicate a kid's room, let alone a teenager's room. It was small, about half the size of his last room. It was even smaller than his dorm room. Like his dorm room, it had a balcony. That was the one thing Bakugou liked about his room, the balcony. It overlooked the backyard. The backyard had a big willow tree that held a wooden swing. There was also a fish pond in the middle of the yard, a stone walkway that went all around the pond, and a patio towards the back of the property. There were a few flower beds and bushes, but those had been dead for years. Masaru was too busy with work to do yard work, and Mitsuki didn't care. Bakugou tossed his bag on his bed. He didn't know what to do now. It was 7 p.m. now. He already ate and made dinner. He couldn't clean because he'd wake his father, and it was too early to go to bed. Bakugou decided to sit at his desk and begin to research, more in-depth, about his father. He already knew that Masaru had a super rare cancer that essentially infected a group of cells and changed their DNA. That change in DNA caused the next generation of replicated cells to be mutated and not function the way they were meant to. The cancer started slowly, so it wasn't detectable. It spread through the entire body, changing all the cells just a tiny bit. It took years for the cancer to grow and spread throughout. Once it spread, it started attacking, causing the cells to mutate beyond the point of normal functionality. With each cell replication, the mutations grew until the cells couldn't continue doing what they originally used to do. He was in multi-organ failure. His nervous system was completely fried, and he was too weak to move. But his brain was unaffected, at least not his frontal lobe. He was still him, still coherent and alert. Bakugou also knew he had 3 to 5 months left to live. He also knew that his parents had been hiding this from him for a year. Bakugou wanted to be angry at this lie. He really did. But he understood it. They were scared and tried to protect him. Or at least tried to avoid this until it became unavoidable like they do with most situations. He was also grateful for not knowing, though he could have helped sooner if he did. He was glad he didn't have to hold that stress with him for that much longer. As selfish as that sounds, Bakugou didn't know how to feel, ultimately. He should have been there. He should have known. He could have helped. But if he had been there when this started, that would only cause his and everyone's mental health to hit rock bottom. He and his mother would have been constantly fighting, which in turn would make Masaru upset. He might not have been able to finish his first year at UA. Now, he only had 3 weeks left of the school year to get through. He was pretty confident that he'll pass his exams and finish off this year strong. He didn't do all that extra studying and training to fail. Bakugou hated that he tried to rationalize the decision his parents made to wait to tell him. He didn't like that for a year he's been living in a delusion that his father was alive and well. It made him feel unbearably guilty. Him being out and about, laughing, having fun, kicking butt, all while his father was going through the worst thing anyone could ever go through. He felt guilty, extremely guilty. But if he had known when his parents first found out, he would have been miserable. But at least he wouldn't feel guilty. Bakugou was reading up on treatments. There wasn't any, but there were ways to make this whole situation more comfortable. He was so into what he was reading that he didn't hear his mother arrive home or make her way to his room. "Watch doing, brat?" Mitsuki slurred. Bakugou jumped and turned around so fast, looking like a deer in headlights. He was so caught off guard. "Geez, you're one shitty hero if you didn't hear me coming." "Pathetic," Mitsuki said, quieter than what Bakugou was used to. She was swaying a little and clearly drunk. "Are you drunk?" Bakugou accused. It had been a long time since he'd seen her drunk. Since she drove drunk and caused a car crash that killed 2 people. Bakugou was in the back seat of the car, crying, trying to get his mother to stop driving. He was 12 when that happened. Bakugou was over at a friend's house for a sleepover. He didn't tell her, but she found out, and in her drunken rage she drove there, barged into the house, dragged Bakugou out and into the car, and sped away. Bakugou was so embarrassed that he stopped hanging out with that friend. She was all over the place. ended up running a red light, slamming into another car, and killing the two inside. A father and his 8-year-old son. Bakugou was the one who called it was one of the scariest nights of his life. He remembered climbing out of the overturned car, clutching his broken arm, crawling over the broken glass, to the other side of the car, finding and grabbing his mother's phone, and calling the police. He remembered the ride to the hospital. It was his first time in an ambulance. Going into surgery for his arm and some internal bleeding. Waking up to his father crying and holding his hand. He stayed a few days in the hospital, yelling and barking at everyone, declaring he was fine. Then he went home with his father. After a week of awkward silence between them, he finally asked about his mom. That's when he found out she was arrested and wasn't coming home for a few months. He didn't understand the legality of what happened, but he did know that Mitsuki was in trouble. Bakugou was shocked to see her drunk again. He thought she learned her lesson. Don't effing take that tone with me, boy. And don't ignore my FNG questions. Now what are you doing? Mitsuki growled. Bakugou wanted to yell at her for being drunk, but he knew she wouldn't listen, and he'd rather go to bed without a beating. Researching. Bakugou said quietly. About what? Mitsuki asked as she took a swig of whatever she was drinking. Bakugou rolled his eyes. About Dad. Bakugou admitted sadly. Mitsuki scoffed. Why the F would Kaya do that? Mitsuki hissed. Bakugou glared at the floor. To understand better. Bakugou said sternly. Mitsuki seemed genuinely surprised. What's there to understand? He's dying. Mitsuki stated. Bakugou glared up at her. I get that, but he's not dead yet. There are ways to make it easier for him. Bakugou started. He wanted to explain how he shouldn't be in pain, how there are medications to lessen the symptoms, to lessen the pain, to make him more comfortable and less stressed. You want him to die quicker? What kind of FNG monster are you? Why you want him to die quicker? Mitsuki growled out venomously. No, that's not what I Bakugou was cut off again. Mitsuki had a way of twisting words. You're a FNG villain. Killing your own father. You're a monster. Mitsuki slurred out. Her cruel words were stated in such a way that made it seem like an absolute fact. The words she used to say to him used to hurt him more than any of her hits. He used to feel so broken, and he used to believe what she said until he realized that she wanted him to feel that way, and it wasn't the truth. Bakugou stopped caring about what she thought of him, he stopped caring about what anyone thought of him, altogether. It never did him any good, and he was tired of being someone he wasn't. He'd rather everyone hate him for who he was than loved for who he wasn't. He was never going to be what Mitsuki wanted him to be, but he didn't want to be anyway. So he stopped obeying her, stopped obeying everyone. Started doing things for himself, by himself, and because of himself. He listened to no one and even went as far as doing the opposite of what they said, just to prove his point. Sure, it was tiresome, constantly arguing with people and letting people down, but he'd rather be in control than be controlled. I'm not saying Bakugou tried one last time to voice his truth. Shut the F up, you terrible, horrible, useless child. You disgust me. Trying to kill your own father because you can't handle this. I can't believe you. Sitting there all arrogantly as your father lays downstairs dying. And you're reading up on what's killing him for the FNG fun of it. You have no FNG remorse. No FNG heart. You're not even FNG human. You're a monster. Mitsuki spat harshly. Bakugou sighed. Whatever. If you don't want to listen to me, then I don't want to listen to you. I'm just trying to help out as best I can. Bakugou scoffed out when Mitsuki took another drink so she wouldn't interrupt him. He turned back to his desk to finish his reading. Whatever, Brett. IFNG hate you. Mitsuki growled and turned and left, shutting the door behind her. Bakugou let out a long sigh and gripped his head with both of his hands. He squeezed his eyes closed, to not let his forming tears fall. I know. Bakugou whispered out. I hate me too. Bakugou woke up with a gasp and a snort. He opened his eyes, still glossy from exhaustion, to look around. The sun was lighting up his room vibrantly. The birds were chirping outside. The morning breeze rang through the neighbors' wind chimes, causing a hollow, clunky sound. Bakugou lifted his head only to realize he was sprawled out on the floor. Bakugou pulled his stiff body up into a sitting position with a quiet groan. The bruising ache on his right side told Bakugou that he fell off his bed sometime last night. The palm-sized scorch marks on his blanket told him that he fell due to a nightmare. Bakugou burned off any residue of his nitroglycerin. He then got up, fixed his bed, and checked the time. It was 7:15. Bakugou did a few stretches then left his room. On his way downstairs, he was going through his latest late night of research. This time, instead of school work, it was terminal illnesses. He learned a lot about the early onset, fast-progressing, aggressive cancer his father has. The doctors weren't entirely sure if it was true cancer, but the exact definition didn't matter. What did matter was that Masaru was dying, and Bakugou had to be supportive. He had to do his best to make his father comfortable, to take care of him, to make sure he doesn't die alone. After stopping at the bathroom, Bakugou finally made his way downstairs. Walking into the living room, he heard something he wished he didn't. Quickly turning his head into the dining room, he spotted his mother. She was standing there at the foot of the bed, completely frozen. Bakugou rushed towards the sound of the flatline, adrenaline coursing through his body. It's too soon. He's supposed to have more time. This can't be happening. Bakugou thought as he frantically examined his father. Bakugou let out a breath of relief when he spotted the rising and falling chest. That relief was quickly washed over by complete confusion. The heart monitor was flatlining, but his father was breathing. Bakugou glanced over to his mother. Her face was white and empty. Bakugou slowly approached his father and checked his pulse. He found it fairly quickly. Bakugou walked to the right side of the bed, where the monitor and oxygen tank was. He fixed the electrodes and reset the monitor. The monitor picked up and displayed the correct pulse. Bakugou double-checked his father's pulse with a stethoscope and his medical training from UA. He learned basic first aid from the hero course, but how to use stethoscopes, blood pressure cuffs, and other armamentariums from Recovery Girl. As he was fixing the monitor and checking his father's vitals, his mother silently walked into the kitchen. After the pulse he read matched the one on the screen, he made his way into the kitchen. He must have unhooked the wires from the electrodes while he was sleeping, causing the monitor to flatline. I fixed it. He's fine. Bakugou muttered bitterly to his mother. She was trembling over the sink. The sink was to the left of the entrance of the kitchen. The countertops were white marble and the cabinets were dark navy blue. They used to be dark wood, but Masaru painted them blue a few years back. At the back left corner of the kitchen was the door to the basement. Bakugou shuddered from just the sight of the door. Too many terrible memories originated from the basement. His mother's favorite form of torture punishment was dragging or kicking him down the stairs and locking him in the closet. He would be locked away for hours, sometimes days. Bakugou peeled his eyes away from the door, still littered with his desperate attempts to escape going down there. The tips of his fingers tingled in memory of clawing the walls and floors. The back wall of the kitchen had more countertops, cabinets, but also the stove and refrigerator. On the counter were the microwave, electric kettle, and rice cooker. The walk-in pantry was at the back right corner of the kitchen. The back door was next to the pantry door. And there was another little counter that shared the same wall as the entrance to the kitchen. Bakugou didn't know where the dining room table was, though it didn't matter because they never sat down and ate at it. His parents would occasionally sit down and eat, but Bakugou was never welcomed at the table. Bakugou moved to the fridge to start breakfast. He made a point to avoid being in the range of his mother and kept as far away from the basement door as possible. You hear me? He's fine. Bakugou barked towards his mother after an awkward minute of silence. He pulled out the eggs and the correct pan. Mitsuki didn't respond. She just grabbed a glass from the drying rack and filled it. Bakugou shrugged and started making breakfast. Bakugou finished breakfast just as his father started to stir. His father needed to take his meds at 9 after he ate and then every 5-hour intervals. Bakugou left the kitchen and his mother and went to his father's side. The rest of the day was oddly quiet. Mitsuki was home, but she was clearly lost in her mind. Bakugou didn't know if it was because she was hungover or something. He knew that she wasn't angry. She just looked lost and guilty. She spent most of her time up in her room while Bakugou hung out with his father. Bakugou was suspicious of her, but he had better things to do than worry about what she was planning. He was working on a plan for these next few months. He had 3 weeks of school until summer break. Originally, he planned to go to a summer training camp with the rest of his class. They've been talking about it for the last few weeks. The pro heroes ensured there was going to be added security. No one wanted a repeat of the last training camp. Summer break was going to last 2 months, but UA offered a bunch of extra schooling opportunities. Bakugou wanted to attend all of the opportunities, and he was set to stay the summer at the dorms. Aizawa-sensei had already called his mother to ask for permission, and she quickly gave it and then hung up. But now, he had to come home for the summer and take care of his father. He had to make sure his father ate, took his meds on time, changed his bed pads, checked his vitals, and just wasn't alone. He also most likely needed to get a summer job. He had no idea what his parents' financial status was. He did know that his father has been out of work for quite some time, and Mitsuki only went to work when she felt like it. His father brought in the most money, so now they were most definitely broke. Bakugou had no idea where to even start with finances and all that adult stuff. He guessed he'll figure out when it became an issue. He knew it probably wasn't the greatest idea, but he didn't know what else to do. He'd ask his mom, but he knew she never bothered with the finances, and he couldn't ask his father and worry him. Bakugou was in the living room, researching medicines, listening to his father taking his mid-afternoon nap. He had been getting through the day pretty well, considering everything. His mother was up in her room, acting strange. His father was in a good mood. Bakugou didn't want to believe it was because he was home. He wanted to think it was because Mitsuki wasn't really around, and not because he was. Who would be glad he was around? Certainly not the first person to give up on him. It would be simpler if his father didn't like him. He knew how to deal with people who didn't like him. Bakugou looked up from the mountain of papers he found himself surrounded by the sound of his mother coming down lugging a suitcase behind her. He watched her reach the bottom of the stairs and pull on her jacket. He wouldn't normally question her leaving, but this time she was leaving with a large suitcase and an anxious look on her face. "Where you going?" Bakugou asked out. Mitsuki jumped and spun around quickly. She looked like a criminal who was caught red-handed. She quickly threw on a harsh glare. "None of your business, brat." Mitsuki snapped. Bakugou stood up. He wasn't about to let her leave. "You're leaving. Why?" Bakugou asked. Mitsuki didn't answer. "Are you coming back?" Mitsuki seemed to freeze when he asked that. Bakugou sharpened his glare. "You can't just walk out. We've been through this. You're needed here." Bakugou growled out. Mitsuki turned around to face him. "Why can't I leave?" Mitsuki said with a shaky voice. Her lip quivered a little. Bakugou was confused. Was she seriously going to cry? "He's your husband. This is your family. Your home. You have responsibilities, obligations." Bakugou said bitterly. He was in the doorway of the living room. "I never asked for this life. I never asked for it to be this way. I don't deserve this." Mitsuki snapped out pitifully. "He never asked for this. He never asked for it to be this way. He doesn't deserve this." Bakugou snapped back. "Yeah, well, there's nothing anyone can do, so why must I stay and torture myself? I'm not dying. I'm not sick. I can go. Live." Mitsuki said quickly. Bakugou was taken so far back. "So that's it? You're just gonna sneak away and get yourself another family? You're just going to replace us? Find yourself a husband that isn't dying?" Bakugou growled as he shook his head in disappointment. "You don't get it, Katsuki. I'm not going to stay here and watch my husband wither away. I'm not going to put myself in the position where I come downstairs and find him dead. I'm not doing that, Katsuki," Mitsuki said, trying her hardest not to yell, but it was hard for both blondes to speak at an acceptable volume, especially towards each other. "God, you're just being weak," Bakugou said. He remembered all the times she said that to him when he was being difficult. "I'm not being weak. I'm just not built to be a housewife. I never signed up to wait on him hand and foot. I want to go out and have fun, not stay home, cook, clean, and take care of Masaru like he's some kind of baby," Mitsuki admitted. Bakugou was blown away. His blood was boiling. He's not a baby. He's dying. He's dying, and he needs you because for some effing reason. He loves you. And no one is asking you to cook and clean and bake FNG cookies. You just need to be here and take care of your dying husband. Keep him company, remind him of all the good memories you two shared. Make him feel like he's not alone. Make him feel loved and cared for and wanted. Bakugou explained. That made Mitsuki start to tear up. Bakugou rubbed his face. He needed to calm down. You know what? Run away. Run away, you selfish bitch. Bakugou growled venomously. Mitsuki looked offended. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of you and your victim complex. And your FNG god complex. You don't get to stay here and make his cancer all about you. If you're not strong enough to sacrifice yourself to your dying husband, then leave. Turn around and walk out that door. That's probably the best thing you can FING do. All you ever did was make us feel miserable and trapped. You forced us into this home, locked us away, and tortured us. So leave. I don't care. I don't even know why I'm trying to get you to FANG stay. I hate you. Bakugou confessed. Mitsuki looked so hurt. Bakugou didn't care. He was sad. He was hurt. Fine. But just you wait. You'll leave too and regret talking to me like this. Mitsuki said as she tried to keep her head up high. I'm not going to leave because I'm not a bad person. Sure, this is going to hurt, and I'm going to hate every minute of being here, but he is my father. He gave me life. So the least I can do is give it back. Bakugou declared. Mitsuki was wide-eyed. She looked like she wanted to say something, but instead, she just turned away and left. Bakugou didn't know why it hurt so much watching her leave. Maybe it was because she was leaving forever. Maybe it was because he was scared to deal with his father alone. He didn't want to let him down by not being strong enough to take care of everything and let him pass in peace. Maybe it was because she didn't even hesitate to leave him them. After everything she's done, all the fires she's set, all that she's ruined, all the damage she's caused, all the pain, hurt, fear, and anguish, she just gets to walk away from it all. No remorse. No apology. No guilt. No looking back. He's not going to leave like that. He can be strong enough to take care of everything. He can do it. He has to. He's all that's left. And that has to be enough. Week 1. All right, you've had your meds, and your vitals are stable. Remember that the caretaker I hired is coming around 9 this morning. They'll be taking care of you while I'm at school. Bakugou explained as he pulled a blanket over his father. Masaru was barely awake. Bakugou wasn't sure if he was even listening. A little hum told Bakugou that he was. I'll be back this weekend. I'll also be checking in throughout each day, so make sure you have your phone in reach and charged up. Bakugou said while he fixed the nasal cannula that supplied oxygen to Masaru. A painful feeling tugged at Bakugou's heart as he gazed at the sick white skin. The sunken features of a man who once looked alive and healthy. The thin, dull hair of a once fluffy brown that used to smell like sandalwood. It hurt seeing his father like this. It only reminded Bakugou of reality. Bakugou shoved down the emotions that were desperately trying to surface as he moved to sit. He wasn't allowing himself to feel, and he was completely confident in his decision. Bakugou pulled on his black high tops. It was 6:15. He needed to head to the train station to get to school. The morning train leaves at 7:10, so he couldn't miss it. The walk to the station takes roughly 30 minutes, and Bakugou liked to be early for everything. He was always one of the first in class, first at school, first at everything. He was never late for anything and he wanted to keep that clean streak. Hey, Katsuki, Masaru called out weakly right as Bakugou stood up to leave. Bakugou froze and looked over at his father. Have a nice day at school. Masaru said with a smile. Have a nice day at school, honey. I love you so much. Have a good day. Be good. Make sure you listen and do all your work. I love you. Katsuki scowled as he watched the cheerful parents send their kids off to school for the day. He never understood why parents said that to their kids. He never got why they made such a big deal about saying goodbye when they'll see each other again at the end of the day. He didn't understand why people said those phrases and acted like they meant something. The phrases couldn't guarantee a good day or make kids behave better. And just because you tell someone you love them doesn't mean you actually do. Kind words and positive attitudes won't make someone behave the way people want them to if they choose to behave a certain way. Katsuki didn't see the point of wishing your kids off with lies. He hated when people lied to him, especially his parents. He was glad his parents never said those things to him. He was glad he wasn't pampered like the other kids. He was always more mature and responsible than kids his own age. He was happy that he was completely independent. He never liked relying on others to help him or take care of him. He was fine with just himself. He also didn't need the fake encouragement other parents gave their kids. Encouragement was just a sugar-coated demand said out of pity. Katsuki saw through the phrases other parents call out to their kids. Have a nice day at school. If you have a bad one and I hear about it, you're in trouble. I love you. Have a good day. I'm only saying this because you're weak, stupid, and no one believes in you. Be good. Don't be AF up. Don't be an embarrassment. You're so terrible, and the fact that I have to remind you to be good proves that. Katsuki knew what those words really meant. Even though he understood what they really meant, he still longed for someone to say them to him, deep inside. He spent many nights debating if people say kind things simply because they are kind people or people say kind things because they want something. Katsuki settled on kind people say kind things to people who deserve kind things said to them, and he was not one of those deserving people, so whenever people are kind to him, they want something. This settled fact was a new motto in Katsuki's life. People were only kind to him when they wanted something from him. 99% of the time, Katsuki could figure out what they wanted from him, and if he couldn't, he just pushed them away. The only hiccup in this way of life was a certain greenette that followed Katsuki around like a puppy. Katsuki couldn't figure out what Deku wanted from him, why he wanted to be friends, and no matter how hard Katsuki pushed Deku away, he would always come back. Bakugou just blinked at his father. Ever since UA, he's gotten used to people's politeness. The good mornings, how are yous, have a good days. Bakugou knew people were only polite to him to prove that they were a good person. Bakugou found politeness a waste of time. He didn't care about people pleasing. But hearing his father wishing him a good day was different. Bakugou didn't know how to react or respond. This was something he longed for as a child. He used to cry himself to sleep over the painful aching of wanting positive attention. However, Bakugou wasn't a child anymore. It was too late to give him the attention his younger self desperately craved. Yeah, I'll have a good day if I want to. Don't tell me what to do. Bakugou snapped defensively as he turned and left. He didn't know how else to respond. Bakugou pulled on a lightweight extra-large jean jacket over his black and white marbled shirt. He didn't have his school bag because it was at school. With his phone in the back pocket of his black ripped jeans, and his outfit now complete, Bakugou left for the train station. The walk to the station was uneventful. He kept himself occupied by talking with the caretaker via text. He wanted to make sure they were qualified to take care of his father. By the time Bakugou got to the station and onto the correct platform, it was nearly he was leaning against a column, waiting for his train, texting the caretaker, completely minding his business when a man approached. This wasn't the first time. Someone approached Bakugou in public. Most people watch him from afar, whispering and judging. Of the people who do approach him, 90% yell at him for existing, while the rest congratulate and praise him. This man wasn't angry or about to praise. He instead put his hand on the column right behind where Bakugou's head was. Bakugou cradled his phone to his chest to prevent the man from looking at the screen and looked up. The man was obviously trying to flirt with Bakugou. The man was in his late 20s and was very overconfident and full of himself. Bakugou wanted nothing to do with this man. Hey, he said in a very flirtatious voice. Bakugou was mentally preparing himself for the ridiculous pickup line that's to come. I'm no weatherman, but you can expect more than a few inches tonight. The man said with no shame. Bakugou wanted to GG. He wanted to blow up at the man and tell him off, but he didn't have time. The train had just pulled up. It's not going to rain. Bakugou stated assertively and with a disinterested glare. Bakugou moved past the man and off the column. The last thing he needed was to be pinned against it. The man, however, didn't like the rejection and spun around and grabbed Bakugou's wrist. Bakugou flinched at the sudden contact. It took Bakugou everything not to explode on sight. He's been lectured countless times on not activating his quick in public. He couldn't take another write-up. Let FING go. Bakugou growled as he tugged his arm back, trying to fight the hold. Calm down, baby. No need to run away, we're having a conversation. The man said in a fake sweet voice. Bakugou hated this situation with a burning passion. He could physically feel his hands getting hotter. They were itching to explode. Get the F off me. I don't want anything to do with you. Bakugou hissed. Bakugou glanced back towards the train that was boarding. He needed to get on. I don't understand why you won't have a conversation with me. I want to get to know you, and I know you want to get to know me. Let's help each other out, yeah? So stop B-dash. The man was cut off by a bystander pulling him off of Bakugou and separating them. The only thing you need to understand is when to walk away. Get the hell out of here before I call the cops, and never treat anyone like this ever again. A younger man, probably late teens, very early 20s, said as he pushed the man back. The man scoffed and walked away in defeat, huffing out insults. Bakugou was grateful to be out of that situation. He looked at the other guy. His hair was almost the same shade of blonde as Bakugou's, a bit more yellow than ash. It was also cut shorter, with the sides and back shaved down and the top short and messy. His eyes were bright red, and his skin was fair like his own. They looked freakishly similar. The other guy must have been thinking that also by the look on his face. Thanks. Bakugou said when he noticed the train about to depart. Bakugou gestured to the train, silently telling the other blonde that he was leaving, and hurried away. Bakugou didn't bother looking back. He didn't care about the other guy, and he certainly didn't owe him anything. They might have looked similar, but that wasn't going to stop Bakugou from treating him like everyone else. Bakugou made it to UA on time. He changed into his uniform and gathered up his work. His day went on like normal. Almost everyone in class questioned him about what he did over the weekend. Bakugou debated on telling them the truth, but he decided against it. He didn't need their pity and fake but support. He was fine. They pushed for answers, but Bakugou never budged. Alright, class, I have an important announcement. Mr. Aizawa said sternly as he walked into homeroom. Everyone quieted down and turned towards the black-haired pro-hero. As some of you may already know, there was an attempted attack on a UA student earlier this week. There has also been a lot of suspicious behavior happening directly outside UA's grounds. Principal Nizu has ordered an emergency lockdown on UA. That means no one is allowed to leave school premises. That includes on the weekends. Aizawa explained. Everyone groaned. What? How long? Bakugou asked anxiously. He needed to be home for the weekends. His caretaker doesn't work on the weekends, and he can't leave his father alone. Hopefully, you all can go home after school is out for summer break, but until then, you are all staying here, no exceptions. Aizawa explained tiredly. Bakugou panicked. He needed to arrange for someone to take care of his father over the weekends as well. Bakugou hated the idea of more people finding out about his father. He hated having to hire a caretaker. He would much rather do everything himself. After school that day, Bakugou phoned home. Hey, it's me. Bakugou said when his father picked up. Hi Katsuki, how was school? Masaru asked. Bakugou still felt weird whenever Masaru asked him how he was or told him to have a good day. It was such an unfamiliar thing to Bakugou, yet it made him feel so normal. It was whatever, listen. I can't come home this weekend. Bakugou cut right to the chase. Oh. Why? School lockdown. So anyway, I'm going to have to hire another caretaker since Hitomi doesn't work weekends. Bakugou explained. That's all right. Hitomi has a cover for the weekends. She figured you might not be able to come back, so she made sure she had someone available. Oh. Bakugou felt relieved. He hated talking to people, let alone strangers, and asking them for help. He was glad Hitomi had someone to cover for his absence. Yeah, so no need to worry. But I appreciate you calling and checking in. It's nice to talk to you, Katsuki. Masaru cooed. Bakugou felt weird. He wasn't used to his father and him talking. Yeah, I'll call you before bed. Later, old man. Bakugou said like his normal self and hung up. He didn't know how to be gentle and soft like this father. Week 3. One more week and Bakugou was home free. He passed all his finals with flying colors. He was tied with Momo for first place in their class ranking. Both got nearly perfect scores, only missing 1 point. Ida was still in second, no surprise there. Bakugou was second for quirk apprehension, just below Todoroki. He was said that he wasn't first, but second place was a great motivator to do even better next year. The last week of school was chill. There were no assignments, no tests, no required training. Students worked on planning their summer training and whatnot. Bakugou originally planned on participating in all offered training and possibly interning with a pro hero. Unfortunately, his plans were changed due to his father's health. Bakugou wanted to be angry and upset about having to take care of his father. His father never took care of him. But ultimately, Bakugou wanted to take care of his father. He missed their relationship before Mitsuki got in the way, and since she wasn't around, they could go back to the way things were. He knew his father didn't have much time, but the time he still had left was worth spending with him. Just sitting down and reminiscing the good old times was enough for Bakugou. He might not be able to have a future with this father, but he could look back and remember the past he had. Morning. Aizawa grumbled out as he strode into class in his yellow sleeping bag. Everyone barked out their good mornings back. Bakugou just gazed out the window, watching a bird fluttering around in a tree. Bakugou, Aizawa said, causing the blonde to turn his attention towards his teacher. I need your activity sheet for training camp. Aizawa said. Kachan forgot to turn something in. Kaminari teased loudly. Everyone giggled. I didn't turn it in because I'm not going. Bakugou snapped aggressively. Everyone quieted down and stared at him, dumbfounded. Not going? Aizawa asked slowly, clearly surprised. That's what I FING said. Bakugou said as he leaned back in his chair. Why aren't you going, Kaken? Midoriya asked in a whiny plead. Everyone followed suit in asking him why and begging him to come. I'm not going because the last time I went to a training camp, I got FING kidnapped. Bakugou snapped bitterly. It was a good enough excuse to cover up the truth. Everyone was quiet, they all looked guilty and sad. I can assure you there is no threat of getting kidnapped or villains attacking. We will have the utmost security, and it's not stationed in a remote area like last time. Aizawa explained. Bakugou glared at him. You can't tell me there's no threat when we are literally still on lockdown because of a threat. I don't care if we have the highest security offered to man. I'm not going. My decision is final. Bakugou hissed. Everyone sighed in defeat. Bakugou was right. Bakugou, I recommend you come with us. This is a great learning opportunity, and UA will do whatever it takes to make you feel safe. Aizawa said, sounding political. No, I'm not going. You're welcome to restrain and muzzle me for refusing, like the last time I refused something. No one seemed to have any issue with that then, don't see why you would now. Or you could let me not attend. Bakugou said harshly. He knew just what to say to guilt-trip people. Bakugou No? Not going to force me to join? Good, because I'm not going to. Bakugou said, folding his arms in victory. Aizawa looked very remorseful. With that, Bakugou was approved to go home for the summer. Aizawa tried to talk to him about when he will return to UA, but Bakugou just played it off like he didn't know yet. Bakugou knew if he told Aizawa that he was planning on staying home all summer, Aizawa would get suspicious. It was finally Friday, and Bakugou was on his way home. He never thought there would be a day where he was excited to return home. With Mitsuki in the wind and refusing to acknowledge how his father dying made him feel, Bakugou was in a relatively good mood. He was still his depressed, self-destructive, distrustful, disrespectful, aggressive self, but he didn't feel completely awful. The train ride back home was uneventful as well. No creepy old men hitting on him, no creepy almost doppelganger, not even any judgmental people glaring and yelling at him either. It was not completely awful. Bakugou walked into his home, surprised that it smelled like ginger and peach. Bakugou slipped off his shoes and dropped his duffel bag on the first landing of the stairs. He heard laughing coming from the dining room, which was now Masaru hospital room. Bakugou hung up his jacket and walked towards the dining room. Katsuki-kun. Welcome home. A bright, energetic voice that Bakugou imminently recognized. Bakugou froze and slowly looked up from his phone. Midoriya-san? Auntie Inko? Katsuki. Mitsuki called out in a fake sweet voice the moment Katsuki returned home from school. Immediately the middle schooler froze. He knew he was in deep trouble when his mother acted all sweet and carrying. Katsuki planned on barricading himself in his room to avoid his mother, but it was too late. Katsuki slipped off his shoes and hung up his coat and book bag. He mustered up the last bit of courage he could find and walked towards the dining room with his hands trembling wildly at his sides. His mother was waiting for him at the table, her fingers drumming along the side of her coffee mug as she impatiently waited for him. Recently manicured nails clicking against the ceramic potential projectile. A glare, so sharp it could cut diamonds, aimed right at the small boy. "Did you hit that Izuku boy again?" Mitsuki asked, keeping up her fake sweetness, yet Katsuki heard the venom behind her words. Katsuki shook his head. He hated lying, but if he admitted that he hit Deku, he'd be in more trouble. It never mattered if he told the truth, his mother would punish him anyway. "I just got off the phone with Inko. She said you punched and pushed Izuku. Do you want to revise your statement?" Mitsuki explained venomously. Her grip tightened around her mug, which Katsuki figured was just a surrogate for his neck. Katsuki just shook his head again, slowly and hesitantly. He feared pissing off his mother, but nothing he did was ever good enough to escape her wrath. The mug shattered against the floor, causing Katsuki to flinch. Mitsuki stormed her way over to her son, grabbed a handful of his spiky ash blonde hair, and dragged him towards the basement door. Katsuki clawed at his mother's hand, a sad attempt to break free. He vaguely heard her screaming at him. He learned to tune her deafening shrieks out just like she tuned out his desperate pleads. Katsuki took a tumble down the basement stairs. The musky smell of mold and mildew made his eyes water, that or the pain and fear. Everything was dizzy and muffled to Katsuki. He couldn't feel anything except the dread for what was to come. Like clockwork, his mother stuffed him into the closet. The only thing in the closet was the water heater and an occasional spider. He listened as she continued her lecture and eventually left. It was always the same suicide. Katsuki would go to school with bruises, Deku would question him about said bruises, Katsuki would lash out and give Deku a bruise or two. Deku would tell his mom, Inko would tell Mitsuki, Mitsuki would lash out and give Katsuki more bruises. Katsuki was always punished for hurting Deku, but Mitsuki got away with hurting him. It was unfair in Katsuki's eyes. He never understood why Deku deserved justice from those who hurt him, but Katsuki didn't. Katsuki would go to school and be taught that everyone was equal and deserved respect, love, and care. That no one deserved to be hurt, and if they were, justice would be served. Katsuki would sit there, with a black eye or hand-shaped bruises on his wrists, silently begging that someone would notice and care. Since elementary, he would sit at his desk looking up at his teachers, pleading for them to help him with his eyes. He was too scared proud to ask for help. Since elementary, he would watch his teachers spot his bruises and ignore them. Since elementary, he listened to his teachers explain that everyone was equal and then turn around and snicker about the quirkless. Since elementary, he was avoided and ignored. He was lied to and blamed, outcast and judged. It didn't take him long to lose faith in ever being saved. No one was going to save him, so he just had to endure everything until he was strong enough to save himself. The world didn't care about him, so he didn't care about the world. He cussed, spit, yelled, and picked fights with everyone. The teachers that ignored him told him to be nicer, so ironically he ignored them and continued to lash out. No one dared to help him, so he never dared to listen. However, he was now having tea with one of those people in his life who never dared to help him. It felt like a punch in the gut seeing Inko fluttering around with a smile, laughing with his dying father, reminiscing the good old days, and Bakugou didn't know why. He didn't know why he had this ache in his heart and lump in his throat. All he could do was watch his anti-filler role that Bakugou didn't even know existed. Masaru ended up falling asleep shortly after Bakugou returned home. They still had some time before dinner, so Inko and Bakugou were left in awkward silence. Inko kept glancing over at Bakugou, debating on talking with him. Bakugou felt the tension in the room. He was tired and uncomfortable, so he made a break for his room. Bakugou stood up and walked towards the stairs. Katsuki! Inko called after him in a hushed voice. Bakugou barely made it up 6 steps before she caught up to him. Bakugou turned around and looked down at the greenette, who was standing by the coat rack. Can we talk? She asked nervously, just like her son. Bakugou sighed quietly and gestured to the front door. With that, they both stepped outside, not wanting to wake up the sleeping man in the other room. What did you want to talk about? Bakugou said as he crossed his arms and leaned against the railing. Inko fidgeted with the hem of her scrub shirt and timidly looked at the deck floor. How have you been? Inko asked, sheepishly avoiding the main reason she wanted to talk to the stoic blonde teen. Cut the CRP and jump to the point. Bakugou barked out. He hated small talk. Inko sighed and looked up at him. Masaru told me what Mitsuki's done to you. Inko began. Bakugou rolled his eyes and looked out into the front yard. I'm so sorry, Katsuki. I should have Should have what? Bakugou quickly interrupted. You're acting like this was all your fault. Bakugou growled out. Katsuki, I am at fault here. So at Mitsuki, so is Masaru. Everyone who was supposed to protect you is at fault here. Inko explained emotionally. Bakugou clicked his tongue and rolled his eyes again. Katsuki, it wasn't your fault. You didn't deserve that harsh upbringing. You didn't deserve all that pain and fear. I'm so sorry. Inko continued. The hell it was. It was all my fault. I should have been stronger. How could I ever inspire to be a hero if I can't even stop my mom from Bakugou cut himself off because a sudden wave of emotion hit him like a truck. He suddenly felt like crying. His lip quivered and his eyes watered, his throat burned and his chest tightened. Bakugou didn't understand why he was getting so emotional. The Midoriyas really had a strange way of rubbing off of him, breaking down his walls and making him cry. Do you know any child heroes? No, because children aren't supposed to fight. It's not fair that you had to struggle so much just trying to live. Adults were supposed to look after you, Katsuki, but they didn't. Your parents, your teachers, we all failed to protect you. I failed you. I'm so sorry. Inko said, slowly breaking into tears. Bakugou just glared at a random splinter of wood and bit his lip, trying to stop it from quivering. Katsuki, I saw the bruises, and I listened to Mitsuki's unfair rants about you. I watched you suffer all these years and did nothing. I'm sorry. Truly, I'm so sorry. Inko confessed as tears ran down her cheeks. Her confession was another punch to Bakugou's gut. Why didn't you do anything? Bakugou choked out, voice cracking from swallowed sobs. He didn't intend to ask that, but his heart made that decision before his brain had a chance to veto it. He's wanted an answer to that question since he could remember. Since he was taught the signs of abused and related to every bullet point. Inko collected herself. She knew Bakugou deserved an explanation. You were hurting Izuku, and I refused to see that you were being hurt as well. It was unfair. If I had just stepped up and helped you, then you wouldn't have hurt Izuku. Bakugou turned further away from her and glared at the front yard. It was always about Deku. Everyone chose Deku over him. The only reason someone would have intervened was to stop Bakugou from bullying Deku, not because they cared about Bakugou. Bakugou shouldered the explanation. He had better things to worry about than his worth. He knew he wasn't worth anything, no point in wallowing in that fact. They stood on the front porch in silence for a few long minutes. Eventually, they both pulled themselves together again, and Bakugou spoke. Alright, whatever. Thanks for taking care of Masaru while I was stuck at school. I'm home now, so you can go. Bakugou stated coldly as he moved to go inside. About that, Katsuki. Masaru and I were talking. We decided it was best that maybe I stick around for a while, help out. Inko said. Bakugou froze and turned around. I'm not weak. I can take care of my father. Bakugou hissed. It's unfair for you to have to. Besides, since Mitsuki is AWOL, someone of legal age has to take care of your father. Someone has to make his medical decisions as his health care proxy. You can't be his proxy because you are under the age of also, who's going to file taxes or pay bills? And do you really want to give your father a bed bath? Do you know how to change his colostomy bag? What happens when he runs out of his meds? You aren't of legal age to get them for him. What happens if dash? Sorry, I get it. You can stay, but you cannot tell Deku anything. Or tell anyone anything. Bakugou cut her off with a defeated sigh. She was right, they needed her help. Wait, Katsugi. Does no one know about your situation? Inko questioned. Of course not, and I want to keep it that way. Bakugou barked. He couldn't handle if this got out right now. Katsuki, you shouldn't be alone in this. Inko pressed. You might get to make the medical decisions, but you don't get to decide who knows about this. Bakugou explained seriously. Inko sighed and accepted her role. If she told anyone about this, especially against his wishes, he could file a HIPAA violation and she'll lose her CNA license. Bakugou and Inko returned inside. Bakugou started cooking dinner, and Inko dived into the research Bakugou did these last 3 weeks. He put together a folder of all experimental procedures, medications, exercises to ease his father's symptoms and potentially buy his father more time. Anything that could help his father was in the folder. Inko was impressed by how thorough his research was. She was a little concerned because Masaru's diagnosis was terminal, and there was nothing anyone could do to save him. Inko was worried that Katsuki hasn't actually accepted what was to come. Then again, she knew he was an overthinker. So, I was thinking about getting a summer job. You know, help with expenses since the hag's gone and he can't work. Bakugou broke the silence as he sat down on the couch with a plate of food. Inko was sitting on the love seat with her plate of food and papers and books all around her. That's a good idea. If you wanted, I could break out your parents' finances and see how the books look. Inko offered. Yeah. You think you could explain everything to me? Bakugou asked quietly. He was always squeamish when it came to asking for help. I'd love to. Inko hummed happily. Bakugou rolled his eyes and dug into his food. Inko and Bakugou ate their dinner in a content quiet. Bakugou never thought that such a light mood could possess his house. Everything felt a little lighter. Deep down, Bakugou was relieved that he didn't have to take care of his father alone, though he'll never admit that. Bakugou liked to think he didn't need anyone's help, that he was strong enough to deal with whatever was thrown his way. But he was starting to believe that maybe accepting help wasn't admitting that he was weak. Bakugou could get used to a quiet, tenseless house. His life was like a dumpster fire with firecrackers being thrown in when he least suspected it, so he was glad he could enjoy this rare moment of peace where nothing is wrong. Bakugou woke from his alarm chiming next to him. He quickly turned it off and dragged his still tired body out of his bed. He had yet another restless night. Between the early mornings and late nights leaving him with little time to sleep, to the nightmares and overthinking that actually prevent him from falling asleep, he's in a constant state of exhaustion. He thought he was prepared for the load he was taking on, but nothing can truly prepare someone for watching someone close to them die slowly. Physically, he was running around, working himself to the bone, to make his father as comfortable and as stress-free as possible. And emotionally, he was running around, working himself to the bone, so he didn't have time to feel. He knew deep down that that wasn't the best thing to do in this situation, but he shoved that thought down like all the others and endured. Bakugou got up, grabbed a quick shower, got dressed, and rushed downstairs. His father was peacefully sleeping. Even though it's been nearly a month at home with him, Bakugou is still not used to seeing his very sick-looking father. Every day the man seems sicker and thinner. Every day the man dies a little more. Every day Bakugou gets reminded of just how much he's pushing down inside. Bakugou hangs another round of treatment on the floor and records this morning's vitals and outputs. After a lot of research, Bakugou found a clinical trial that could potentially lessen his father's symptoms and buy them more time. Bakugou was fully aware that the trial wasn't curing his father, but it was easing his pain. With this, his father could live a few more months. Bakugou knew his father was fighting to stay alive, knew he wanted every last second he could get. Bakugou didn't understand why he wanted to stay alive, continue to live through this agonizing hell. But in truth, Bakugou didn't understand because he didn't know his father. He knew nothing of this man he was taking care of. Bakugou made himself breakfast and some coffee. It was already 6:30 a.m. After he finished eating, he hurried to clean up and get ready for work. Bakugou was pulling on his shoes and coat when Inko walked in. "Good morning, Katsuki." Inko greeted with a bright smile. Bakugou stood up and grabbed his bag. "Morning." He's had his first round of treatment, and his vitals are stable. "I'm running to the store after work, so if you could go through everything and text me what we need, that'll be great," Bakugou explained as he rushed out the door. He had less than 10 minutes to get to the train station. He sprinted all the way, though he didn't mind because at least he got in a morning run. Once he got off the train, he walked quickly to his job. He managed to snag a job as a junior chef in the kitchen of a diner. The place was small, food was cheap, management was greedy, the pay was trash, but he needed it. Even though most of Masaru's medical bills were paid for by the clinical trials, Bakugou still needed to pay other bills. He got a summer job to pay for the mortgage, property taxes, utilities, and groceries. He worked 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., 5 days a week. After work, Bakugou ran to the train station. He's determined to get as much training in as he can over this break. He doesn't want to fall behind, so even though he's tired and his whole body is aching, he works harder. He's addicted to the feeling of his muscles burning as he runs faster and faster. To the sound of his feet hitting the ground and his heart racing. To the wind in his face and how clear his mind gets when the only thing he has to think about is running. The train ride was busy and cramped. Everyone was rushing home from work. Bakugou just listened to his music and focused on his high from running. Once he's off the train, he jogs to the store. He buys eggs, milk, bread, rice, whatever meat is on sale, and some fresh vegetables. He heads home, only to be reminded of what he's returning to. Dying father. Awkward conversations with his auntie. And the suffocating feeling of his broken home. Stepping inside, his body still trained to expect yelling and hitting, but instead welcomed by Inko. She grabbed the groceries and took them to the kitchen to put them away and start dinner. Bakugou kept telling her that she didn't need to stay once he was home, but she kept insisting. Bakugou slipped off his shoes, realizing his feet were killing him. He walked slowly through the living room and into the dining room, plopping down in the chair next to his father's bed. Masaru was sitting up enjoying a cup of tea. He seemed more lively than he has been in a while. "How was work?" Masaru asked with a sweet smile. Bakugou groaned and sunk further into the chair. "Same as always," Bakugou hissed out as he rubbed his face. He was tired. "I guess nothing exciting happened today?" Masaru pushed. Bakugou didn't get why his father wanted to hear about his day. No one ever cared about his day, let alone actively wants to listen to him. Kirishima might be the exception, but Bakugou is still working out the red-haired nerd's intentions. "Had this old hag send back every dish I made her even though they were perfect. Saw someone with a chicken on the train. And watched a male Karen yell at some skateboarders." Bakugou explained emotionlessly. Masaru chuckled lightheartedly. "People never change," Masaru said playfully. Bakugou rolled his eyes. Inko brought out dinner for them and sat down on a chair on the other side of Masaru. They ate dinner, Inko and Masaru chatting about everything and nothing. Bakugou didn't bother paying attention. Towards the end of dinner, Masaru started coughing. His vitals started dropping, and the coughing turned violent. Inko and Bakugou jumped up to help. Bakugou rubbed his father's back and held the oxygen to his face while Inko administered some medicine to help. After Masaru's coughing episode subsided and he stabilized, Inko and Bakugou relaxed. Bakugou plopped back down in his chair. "That was a bad one," Inko commented. Masaru nodded and laughed it off. Bakugou groaned loudly, causing the two adults to look at him. "I don't understand why you're so set on living like this when you could just die." Bakugou growled out, not trying to sound offensive or cruel but ended up sounding exactly that. "Katsuki-kun." Inko snapped in an authoritative voice that Bakugou didn't care about respecting. "I'm not saying die. All I'm saying is that I don't get why you are fighting so hard to live when things are just going to get worse." Bakugou tried to explain, but he was tired, in a bad mood, and just making everything worse. Inko was about to lecture him when Masaru cleared his throat. "Every second I get to spend with you is worth fighting for," Masaru said, genuinely serious. Inko thought it was cute while Bakugou internally threw up. Yeah, right? Bakugou barked as he rolled his eyes. He didn't believe that was the reason Masaru was fighting to hang on. Inko and Masaru's smiles turned sad. You don't believe me? Masaru said sadly, though Bakugou didn't catch it. He was always terrible at reading others' emotions. He couldn't even read his own. Masaru grabbed a book off the table next to him. He ended up knocking over almost everything, but eventually, he got the book. I guess you don't remember, though I understand why. Masaru said as he looked down at the book in his lap and gently ran his fingers over it. Bakugou straightened up to listen to his father, surprised by the solemn expression. I never was close with my father. I tried everything to get close to him, but he didn't want that. Didn't want me, Masaru said, almost tearfully as he began to recall. Bakugou was not expecting this, yet listened with his heart opened. He died when I was a few years younger than you. I never got close to him. I know we were never very close. It was hard with Mitsuki, I can admit that now. I don't blame you for distancing yourself from me. I don't blame you for anything. Not even for being angry with me. You should be angry with me. You should resent me. I couldn't protect you. I let you down. I let you slip away from me. Masaru continued. A few tears slipped from his dull eyes. Bakugou froze. He hated seeing his parents cry. When you were born, when Mitsuki brought you to me, it was the happiest day of my life. You were this tiny little angel. So precious and perfect. I fell in love with you that moment I first held you in my arms. Then I married Mitsuki a month later and worked as a stay-at-home dad for the first few years of your life. We went on so many adventures, saw so many things. It was everything I've ever wanted and so much more. Masaru said as he smiled bittersweetly as more tears escaped. Bakugou was shocked. Over the years, we stopped going on adventures, stopped hanging out. Eventually we stopped talking. I realize that. Even though I don't have much time left, I can't think of a single thing I'd rather do than spend it with you. Even if it's just sitting in silence with you, I'll take every second of it I can get. I have so many regrets in life, but my biggest one was failing you as a father. So, whether I have 1 minute to live or 1 month, I want to spend it being your father. Masaru said as he grabbed a tissue to try to stop his tears. Bakugou was stunned. For some strange reason, Bakugou believed his father. He believed that his father actually cared about him. He knew his father had no reason to lie, and deep down, he knew his father always tried his hardest to be there for Bakugou. His father was the one who rescued him from wherever Mitsuki locked him up. He was the one who walked through the streets and alleys calling for Katsuki to come home when Mitsuki kicked him out. He was the one who made sure there were always bandages in the bathroom and his favorite foods in the fridge. He was the one who tried to stop Mitsuki from raging, to de-escalate every situation. He was the one who covered for him when Katsuki didn't come home when told or accidentally broke something or forgot to do a chore. Even from afar, Masaru cared for Katsuki. Bakugou suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of guilt. He was so mad at his father for not dealing with Mitsuki, only to just now realize that he was dealing with Mitsuki the best way he thought, and it wasn't enough. Bakugou realized they were similar than he previously liked to believed. Bakugou spent most of his childhood hating his father for not doing anything only to now realize he was doing the best he could. Bakugou imploded. The walls he put up to stop his father from getting close collapsed. Right now, Bakugou wanted nothing more than to curl up to his father and listen to all his stories like all those other kids used to do with their fathers. Bakugou wanted, craved, needed that close bond with his father, desperately. He felt like falling apart into tears and sobs and letting his father scoop him up and put him back together. He wanted to be a kid again. He wanted to go back before things got bad and be a kid. A normal, snot-nosed, weak-butt, carefree kid. The fact that Bakugou was never a kid and he was never okay with not being one hit him hard. His entire life, he told himself that he was okay with not being cared for, protected, loved like the other children were. But now he was wishing he was like the other kids. He wished he had a normal childhood, even if that made him weak like everyone else, he longed for it. Bakugou was forced to swallow another bitter fact. He was never going to have a normal childhood. His parents stripped him of that. The thing he discovered that he's been longing for his entire life was stolen away from him by his own parents. Bakugou was frozen in his chair, watching his father cry, grieving the normal childhood he never got to have. So many emotions. So many things that could have been. So many things that need to be said. So little time. Katsuki. Katsuki, wake up. A tiny whine came from the little blonde as he rolled over and looked up at his father. It was early, barely even 4 a.m. The world was still as everyone snoozed, and darkness stretched over the entire sky. Katsuki poked his head out of his bundle of blankets he found himself tangled in. In the light of his all-might nightlight, he made out his father's excited smile. Let's go on an adventure, Masaru whispered playfully. Katsuki groaned and plopped his head back into his pillow. He was not happy about being awake at his hour. We have to be quiet, so we don't wake up your mother. Get up, let's go, Masaru said softly as he began looking through Katsuki's dresser for an outfit. Katsuki sat up and rubbed the exhaustion out of his face. He followed his father's wishes and fought off the longing to fall back asleep. He watched his father move silently through the room. After a minute, Masaru came back with a pile of clothes. He quickly got Katsuki dressed and carried him downstairs. Masaru moved like a ninja, never making a sound as he scurried through the unlit house. Katsuki rested his head against his father's chest as he carried him down the street. The cold, crisp air nipped at Katsuki's nose and cheeks, making them rosy. The sound of his father's footsteps against the cobblestone echoed through the vacant street. Katsuki tightened his grip on his father's jacket as an uneasy feeling set in. Katsuki knew his mother would be unhappy that they snuck out. He knew he was going to be punished for going on this adventure. The fear of getting in trouble was screaming at Katsuki to turn back, yet the determined smile on his father's face told him that he was where he was meant to be. Masaru carried them to a scenic lookout of sorts. Climbing the stone steps to a viewing area that overlooked fields, forests, and the sea. When Katsuki looked out, he saw the sun just barely about to erupt out. Katsuki rubbed his eyes again and straightened up. The sky was already vibrant pink and violet. Eventually, Masaru put Katsuki down, only for Katsuki to climb up the wooden fence to get a better view. They watched the sunrise in silence. The light burned upwards and began to thicken and settle across the land in brilliant pinks, purples, oranges, and golden hues. Watching such vivid and rich color flood out and touch everything, Katsuki wondered how he's never seen such a thing. They continued to watch the west tear off its many clouds of darkness and send up the first signal. When the sun hung disattached in the blue air, touching everywhere with its ocean of yellow waves, the pair descended the hill and returned home. Bakugou laid on his bed, looking up at the ceiling, basking in the light that had snaked its way into his room. He didn't have work today, which meant he didn't have to wake up before the sun. He listened to Inko move through her routine downstairs. She came over earlier than usual, knowing this was his much-needed day off. He told her multiple times that she didn't need to come over when he was home, but she insisted. She saw the dark bags under Bakugou's eyes and the way his body threatened to collapse from the exhaustion. It's not that he didn't have enough time to get a well-rested night of sleep, it was his stupid brain not shutting off to allow himself to rest. His nightmares have become less frequent since his mother walked out, but the constant anxiety about his father and his future straggled any chance of sleeping peacefully. Bakugou glanced over at the leather photo album Masaru gave him the night before. It was packed full of good memories shared with his father but long forgotten by the teen tucked away and hidden behind the cruelty of his upbringing. Bakugou didn't know how to feel about it. He spent so many years resenting his father for not being there for him, only to find out he was, and Bakugou just forgot. It's not like he forgot. It's just that the traumatic memories were more recallable than the good ones. After staring up at his ceiling for hours, debating if he should look through the book or not, Bakugou finally came to a decision. Curiosity and guilt got the better of the blonde as he found himself grabbing the book off the floor and sitting up against the wall. He ran his fingers over the old leather, tracing a circular water stain from someone leaving their cup on the cover. He carefully untied the string and opened the book. The Bakugou family album. Bakugou stared at the title page. There were signatures from Masaru's parents, Masaru and Mitsuki under the bold title. Bakugou brushed his finger over an empty line, where he could write his signature in and officially become part of the Bakugou family. He never thought of that before. He knew other families had an heirloom that gets passed down to each generation. Families all around the world have some sort of memorial to remember past generations. Bakugou never thought much of his families. He knew very little of his grandparents, who all died before he was born. His parents never talked about their families or childhoods, so he didn't know if he had any relatives. He never festered the idea of having his own family one day, too focused on becoming the #1 hero and hating his existence. Bakugou flipped through the first few pages of the photo book. There were pictures of Masaru as a kid posing with his parents, memorable moments caught perfectly on film forever. Pictures of Masaru's friends, adventures, birthdays, awards, graduations, and more filled the beginning pages of the book. Under them were crafty little captions and dates to classify the memories neatly. Bakugou continued to flip through the book, slowly and carefully, not wanted to ruin such a treasured item. The first photo of Masaru and Mitsuki caught Bakugou off guard. They were young, a little older than him. His father looked the same, but his mother was almost unrecognizable. She had long, dirty strawberry blonde hair, nothing like the ash blonde hair she has now. Her eyes were a vibrant pink, nothing like the cold red eyes she has now. Bakugou almost didn't believe he was looking at the woman who gave birth to him. They looked nothing alike. Bakugou continued to flip through the pages. He looked at photos of his parents' senior prom, high school graduation, first jobs, first cars, first apartments, and more. It seemed that his parents were off and on since their senior year of high school. The first photo of Bakugou caught him off guard. There he was, a tiny newborn baby swaddled up in his father's arms. The next photos were his parents getting married. No wonder his mother always called him a bastard child. He was born out of wedlock. Photos of little Katsuki growing up and going on adventures with Masaru followed next. Pictures of his birthdays, of his and Masaru's adventures to amusement parks, zoos, museums, and parks lined the pages of the old book. His first hospital visit, his first broken bone, his first day of school, his first friend, his first All Might figure were all in the photo book. Pictures of him learning to swim, ride a bike, cook, read, and write were glued to the paper for all to see. All the happy memories of his childhood laid neatly put together in his lap. It was such an estranged feeling. Bakugou looked down at his kid self, smiling brightly and posing goofily. He remembers himself feeling happy and safe when those photos were taken. He remembers the laughter and carefree attitude both he and his father had when they explored around without Mitsuki. Bakugou was shocked. Slowly, very slowly, memories played in Bakugou's mind as he looked through the photo book. Memories Bakugou had completely forgotten about, memories ruined and stained by the abuse he suffered through, came back. It wasn't painful or overwhelming to Bakugou. He wasn't feeling anxious or heavy as he remembered, like the last few times he's remembered things. He felt like he found a piece of himself. He knows he isn't happy right now. He knows he hasn't been happy for so long. But the reminder of a time when he was genuinely happy was giving him hope that one day he'll be happy like that again. Bakugou knows he's a long way from feeling whole, but having the good moments of his childhood back was one step towards it. Bakugou continued looking through the photo album, too caught up in the past to notice the tears rolling down his cheeks and the aching his heart. He pushed away the dark thoughts telling him that this was all meaningless, and shoved down the growing anxiety trying to remind him of the present, and continued to walk down memory lane. He clung to this moment, this feeling of remembering what it felt like to feel, to ignore the harsh reality he currently found himself in. Dark hardwood splinter under his fingernails as he claws at the floor, desperate not to activate his quirk. There's blood on him, staining his clothes and pooling on the wood below him. He can't hear his mother yelling at him or feel the impact of her foot, but he knows it's happening. His eyes are locked with the brown of his father's. He's just standing there, watching him get hurt. He's not doing anything, not stepping in to stop Mitsuki, not trying to save Katsuki at all. He doesn't understand why he's just standing there watching. Why isn't he helping him? Why isn't he protecting him as fathers should? Was it because he agrees with Mitsuki that Katsuki deserves to be punished? Was he not worth saving? his father's silhouette turns and walks away, leaving Mitsuki to deal with Katsuki however she feels fit. Katsuki's heart shatters. He calls out for his father. He wants him to stop Mitsuki. He wants him to save him. He wants him to do something. He wants him to tell him that everything is going to be okay. Katsuki reaches out for his father because his voice isn't reaching. He doesn't care if Mitsuki thinks he's weak for wanting help. He's crying out for Masaru, begging for him to come in and do something, praying that he'll save Katsuki because he's the only one who knows he's being hurt. But his father continues to walk away. The world is crumbling around Katsuki, darkness is engulfing him, and he's falling. He's fighting to hold on, to pull himself back up. It's not working. He's falling. He's reaching up for his father to catch him, but he knows he's not going to. Darkness surrounds him as his father abandons him. Bakugou jerked awake. He flung his body upwards, so he's sitting up. His arm is cast out, searching for his father. He feels the tears streaming down his cheeks and a heaviness in his heart. Bakugou takes a breath and pulls his arm to his chest. He brings his knees up and rests his head on them and lets out his tears. It's been a few weeks since he's had a nightmare that left such a bitter ache. Just before he was about to fall asleep again, his alarm rings. With a heavy sigh, Bakugou rolls out of bed. He's back at UA for his second year. It's been a few months since he's seen anyone. They've all changed a lot. He listened to the class talk about the training camp, scold him for not answering their calls and texts, and chat about their fun-filled break. As he listened to everyone reconnect with each other, he never felt more apart from them. A small part of him wished they could see through his mask and acknowledge that he was in pain. He wanted to tell them about what he was going through, how lost and scared and hurt he felt, and let them make everything better. He hated acting like he was strong when all he wanted was to be weak. It pained him knowing that the people around him, dare he say his friends, didn't see him at all. He was screaming for someone to notice that he was in pain, yet no one cared to look. It was elementary school all over again. As Bakugou went through his Wednesday morning routine, morning run, shower, breakfast classes, he couldn't stop thinking about the dream he had. He spent the last few weeks with his father. They talked, laughed, joked, cried, and bonded. Bakugou learned all about his father's life, his parents, his old friends, the stupid things he did as a teenager. Masaru even listened to Bakugou talk about heroes, cooking, the mangas he read, his day-to-day life. It was a nice change of pace, having someone listen and not judge him for the things he's interested in. But just because they were getting along now, didn't mean Bakugou forgot about the past. Bakugou wanted to forget and forgive his father. He didn't want to be selfish and yell at Masaru and call him out for being a terrible father the letting Mitsuki abuse them. Bakugou wanted to keep avoiding the uncomfortable conversation about how Masaru hurt Bakugou more than anyone has ever hurt him when he promised Mitsuki wouldn't hurt him again. He wanted to deny the fact that he wasn't okay and hasn't been in years. He wanted to continue to pretend that his father's and his relationship was great and always has been. He didn't want to admit that he was still in pain, even after Mitsuki left and he and Masaru were talking again. Bakugou didn't know what to do. He longed to blow up on his parents about how they treated him and how he deserved better. He wanted justice for the shit they put him through. But he didn't want to start drama now that things were actually peaceful. "Hey, Icy Hot!" Bakugou barked as he caught up with Todoroki. The class was heading to heroics training. Todoroki turned around and waited for the shorter blonde to walk up to him. "Hello, Bakugou." Todoroki greeted in a monotone voice like always. "How'd you go about forgiving your old man for all the shit he put you through growing up?" That question made Todoroki freeze in his spot. Todoroki was caught off guard. He didn't know how to respond to Bakugou. At first, he thought Bakugou was playing a prank on him, but looking at the explosion user's face, he knew this was a serious conversation. Bakugou stood in front of him, patiently waiting for a response. "My siblings and I, mostly my brother, yelled at Endeavor about how he parented us. And Endeavor worked on bettering himself and making everything up to us. Talking about how his parenting affected each of us and how we felt helped us all get better. It took a lot of work and I had to be willing to hear Endeavor out. I wouldn't say I've forgiven him, well, I don't know. Have I?" Todoroki trailed off towards the end of his explanation. Bakugou didn't stick around for Todoroki to admit he forgave his father or not. Bakugou got what he wanted and left, leaving Todoroki in the middle of the hallway contemplating everything. If the Todorokis could get through their issues, Bakugou could work through his with his father. Bakugou was determined. He was going to go home this weekend, and he was going to sit down with his father and talk about everything. Masaru needed to know how hurt Bakugou was when he stopped trying to help him. How much Mitsuki hurt him and how he deserved better. Masaru always says how Bakugou should be angry with him. Bakugou wasn't going to continue to beat around the bush anymore. He was going to confront his father and they were going to lay everything out on the table and get through it together so eventually they could have a better relationship. Bakugou focused everything he had during training while thinking about what exactly he wanted to say to his father. He was flying through the air, flawlessly taking out targets, when Aizawa called for him. Bakugou changed trajectory and flew over to Aizawa and landed. "I got a call from your aunt. Your father was rushed to the hospital, and she's on her way to pick you up," Aizawa explained. Bakugou's heart dropped. The reality that Masaru was dying smacked Bakugou across the face. Bakugou didn't know why he thought Masaru was getting better. He should have realized that getting better just meant Masaru was preparing to die. Already Masaru was living on borrowed time, having surpassed the length of time the doctors originally gave him. Bakugou wasn't ready to lose his father after just getting him back. Bakugou felt himself running through the halls of UA. He was still in his hero costume, but he didn't have time to change. He needed to get to the hospital. He needed to get everything off his chest and say everything he wanted to say to his father. He wanted to yell at his father for leaving him all those years ago and for leaving him now. The world around Bakugou was a blur, and time seemed to stand still as he ran towards the gate. "Katsuki, how are you holding up?" Masaru asked softly. Katsuki looked away from the car window and towards his father. "I don't understand, where did he go?" Katsuki asked quietly. "Oh, Katsuki, it's hard to explain. But Tsubasa-kun is in a better place now," Masaru answered with a watery smile. "How is the ground better? Why couldn't he stay longer?" Katsuki asked as tears welled up. He didn't understand the hurt he felt inside. "Katsuki, people can't always stay with us, no matter how much we want them to. Today, we put Tsubasa-kun to rest. You know he's not coming back, right? He's gone, baby." Masaru started to tear up as well. He didn't know how to explain death to a 7-year-old. "He's dead, and now only his body remains, which is why we put it to rest. His soul is in a better place, and though it's not here with us anymore, one day you'll see him again." So explained. "Will everyone go away?" Katsuki asked after a long, silent minute. Katsuki was looking out the window again, watching his classmates and their families leave the graveyard. They were dressed all in black, and some were crying. The sky was heavy, gray, and looked like it was about to cry too. One day, nobody can live forever. One day their day will come, and they'll be reunited with all those they've lost while they lived. Don't be sad, Katsuki, death comes for us all, which is why we have to appreciate the time we spend together living," Masaru said with a sniffle as he rubbed Katsuki's knee. "Will you go away one day?" Katsuki asked with a broken voice as he choked down sobs and held back tears. "One day," Masaru admitted. "But not for many years. And no matter where I go or what happens, I'll always love you. I'll always be here to look after you, and even if I'm far away, I'll hold you in my heart," Masaru explained with a soft smile and kind eyes. A slide. Life support. No chance of recovery. Gone. Bakugou didn't need to hear every word the doctors said to him to understand what happened. It was all over. Masaru was gone. No more funny stories, no more inside jokes, no more comforting hugs, no more memories. Masaru was gone, leaving Bakugou alone again in the world. Currently, he was being led to his father's room while everyone he passed looked at him, no doubt, recognizing him since he was still in his hero suit. "We'll give you some space," the doctor said as they opened the door and gestured for Bakugou to enter. Inko rubbed his back as Bakugou took a breath and walked in. Seeing his father lying motionlessly in a bed with a bunch of wires and tubes coming out of him was sickening but nothing new. However, this sight was something different. Bakugou wanted to run away and cry. He didn't want to be here at all, his heart broken, his chest tight, his body cold, and the world around him seemed dull and gray. He didn't know what to do. Everyone behind him was telling him to say goodbye, but that was the last thing Bakugou wanted to do. Bakugou had no idea what he was doing. Logically he knew his father was gone, but his chest was still rising and falling. The vents were keeping him alive while his brain was gone. Bakugou wanted his father back. He wasn't ready to let him go. It was a pitiful thing. After years of not needing his father, suddenly, he didn't know how to continue without him. I'm wearing my hero costume. I know you've always wanted to see me in it. So just wake up and... Tears quickly welled up. He knew it was selfish for him to want his father to wake up. Bakugou slowly approached the bed. He desperately wanted to yell at his father for leaving so soon, to beg him to stay, to blame him for everything that's ever happened. Regardless of his screaming, bleeding heart, Bakugou slowly slid into the chair next to his father and cradles his father's hand in his own. I'm sorry. I'm not good at things. Bakugou said in a soft, sad, gentle tone. Everything inside him was telling him to hold on, to not say goodbye, to fight to find a way to save his father. Through the traitorous tears, Bakugou ignored his selfish desires and forced himself to be there for his father one last time. I want to tell you to keep fighting, to stay with me longer, but I know you're tired. I know you want to stay, but you don't have to. Stay with me. I'm going to be okay, Dad. You don't have to worry about me. Yes, you do. I'm not as strong as I say I am. Please don't leave me. You can go now. It's going to be okay. You can rest now. I'll be okay. Don't go. I can't do this without you. Please, I need you. I've always needed you. Everything is going to be okay. I can't do this. Please don't go away. Please don't leave me. I love you. I love you. I love you. Just rest now. It's okay. Bakugou whispered out. Through his tears he watched the heart monitor alarms go off, signaling the end. Swiftly and respectfully, the doctors turned off the machines. Bakugou buried his head into the hospital bed and cried. Bakugou listened to the slow, raspy breathing of his father eventually cease. Quiet sobs were all that filled the room. Bakugou wasn't sure how long he was clinging to his father's body. He wished this was all a terrible nightmare, and by the time he lifted his head, everything will be okay. He vaguely heard Inko trying to get him to leave, but he stayed still. What snapped him out of his wishful thinking was the sound of his mother's voice. Oh, Masaru. Mitsuki's voice rang through the room. It was quiet, soft, and sad. Bakugou lifted his head as his adrenaline spiked. He saw tears in his mother's eyes. Katsuki. Her voice, lacking the familiar venom, was just above a whisper. She reached out to him, but Bakugou could not bring himself to feel comforted. Bakugou just slowly stood up and wiped the tears from his face. When Bakugou looked down at his father, it was very clear he was long gone. Sick to his stomach, Bakugou walked out of the room. Inko followed him. Bakugou just left the hospital and climbed into Inko's car. He felt sick. Everything around him was gray, and he felt heavy. He felt like he was about to break apart and crumble. He just wanted to crawl into bed and forget this nightmare. Are you okay? Inko asked as she climbed into the driver's seat. Bakugou was vibrating as tears continued to fall. Okay, stupid question, I'm sorry. Inko whispered as she gripped the steering wheel tightly. Where do you want to go? Back home or back to the dorms? Inko asked. Bakugou just looked out the window. It started to rain. Just drive. Bakugou whispered back. Inko obeyed and started the car. After about an hour of driving around in circles, he needed out. Bakugou needed to find a release for the heaviness in his chest. The reality of what just happened set in, and he needed to breathe. Inko pulled over to the side of the road, and Bakugou practically flung himself out of the car. The rain pelted down, soaking him within seconds. Bakugou took a deep breath, looked up at the sky, and screamed. For what felt like hours, Katsuki screamed. He screamed until his throat was raw, his lungs threatened to collapse, and his head pounded. He screamed and sobbed and cursed the world. Finally, Bakugou returned to the car. Inko wrapped him in a towel and drove him to Ua. Bakugou felt numb. He thought he was prepared for his father's death, but it was taking him everything to just take the next breath. The hurt in his chest was worse than anything his mother could ever do or say to him. Pulling up to Ua felt foreign. Before you leave, I'm going to tell Aizawa what's been going on, in case you need some time before returning to school. Do you want me to tell your friends so they can support you through this? Inko asked. Do what you think is best. Going to bed. Bakugou said quietly as he stepped out of the car. Inko parked the car and followed him in. Hey Bakubro. Welcome back. Why did you have dash? Kirishima was cut off by Inko silently telling everyone to not address the blonde as he marched towards his room. Katsuki, dear, make sure you eat something or at the very least, drink something. Inko called out to Bakugou as he continued walking. Bakugou hummed and slipped away down the hall, leaving the class confused. Mom! Deku called out as he approached his mother. Inko let out a long sigh. Hey baby. You know where Eraserhead is? Inko asked. Yeah, he's in his office. What happened? Deku asked. Inko hugged her son. Take me to Eraserhead, please, baby. And the rest of you. Be considerate towards Katsuki. Make sure he eats. Inko explained. Deku walked his mom to Aizawa's office. Before you head up to bed, I have an announcement to make. Aizawa said later that day. Most of the class was sprawled around the common room. Everyone turned towards the tired teacher and gave him their attention. Bakugou's father has just passed away. I need you all to be respectful and kind to him through these hard times. Don't baby him, don't bring this sensitive topic up until he is ready to talk about it. Just be there for him, but also give him space. I trust you all know how to behave. Aizawa explained. Everyone was shocked. They all felt bad for Bakugou. Some could only imagine how awful he must feel, while others could empathize with losing a loved one. How cruel to say the least. I've just gotten you back, but at last, you leave once more. Never to return. Oh, how the emptiness inside fills your absence. Hello. Hello, this is Dr. Watanabe from Uzudafu Medical. Is this Midoriya Inko? Why yes. This is she. Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm calling in regards to the late Bakugou Masaru. It says here you are his medical proxy. I know he just passed away recently, and I understand if you wish not to speak about him at this time, but I have some urgent matters that need to be discussed. Yeah, I can talk. All right then. There are two affairs that we need to discuss. 1. Bakugou Masaru's remains are ready to be picked up. The med students and scientists have finished their invasive autopsy study. They thank you again for donating his body to their research. He's been cremated, right? Correct. Okay. Now, on to the more urgent matters. While studying Bakugou-san and his history, a med student noticed the results from a certain test taken when Bakugou-san was first diagnosed wasn't entirely accurate. Furthering their investigation, the med student discovered that Bakugou-san's illness began far earlier than previously thought. I don't dash dot. The med student pulled some records from Bakugou-san's father, who passed away from a similar illness. At comparing the biopsies, the med student and their advisor discovered that the two illnesses that caused them to pass were nearly identical. So what does this mean? It means that the original diagnosis, somatic carcinoma, was wrong, and what Bakugou-san and his father both had was germline carcinoma. Germline? What does that mean? It means that the very aggressive, almost entirely impossible to detect, cancer that took Bakugou-san is genetic. I understand Bakugou-san has a son. There is a high possibility that he inherited the same illness. From what we understand about this type of aggressive cancer, it starts somewhere small, is undetectable, and spreads to the entire body before symptoms start. We think said cancer started in Bakugou-san when he was 25, about 10 years younger than his father. What we can infer with this type of cancer is as it gets passed down through the generations, it becomes more aggressive. We partnered with the Worldwide Association for Cancer Research, or WACR, to further our investigation into this cancer. We've managed to track it through Bakugou-san's family tree, it being one of few cancers still prevailing. From our data, The next generation, if they were to inherit this, would have developed cancer as early as 10 and would start showing symptoms in their early 20s. Once those symptoms start, it is too late for any treatment to be effective. Oh my god. What do we do? Bakugou-san's son just needs to take a quick DNA test so we can see if he has the cancer gene. If he does, we'll bring him in, run a full workup to isolate the developing cancer, work to treat it, and hopefully save his life. DNA test, got it. Where do I get one of those? We'll give you one when you pick up Bakugou-san's ashes. I'll be there soon to pick them up. Alright, I'll see you soon. I'm sorry for the distressing news. No worries. Thank you for telling me. How is he? Mina asked as Kirishima walked into the common room. He wouldn't open his door, so I just left the food outside it. Kirishima explained with a heavy sigh. Again? It's been 4 days. Shiro chimed in from his spot on the floor. His dad just died. If my dad died, I probably would never leave my room. Jiro explained. I'm worried about him. Is he eating? Mina asked like a worried mom. He eats about one of the meals we bring him a day. Kirishima said. I feel so bad. I wish I knew what to do to support him better. Kaminari said with a heavy heart. Yeah, it's hard to be there for him when he isolates himself. Shiro said, looking down at his math homework. The Bakusakad was sprawled around the couches in the common room, brainstorming ways to help their friend instead of doing their homework. No one was complaining. The rest of the class was sat around the common room, silently studying or eating dinner. What broke the silence that fell over the downhearted class was Inko Midoriya walking into the common room. Mom! Midoriya quickly called out when he spotted his mother. Izuku darling. How are you? Inko asked sweetly, yet there was sadness in her eyes. I'm doing alright. Do you know how kakens do.ing? Midoriya's words died down when he spotted the urn in Inko's hands. Midoriya frowned. I know you're upset with me for not sharing what was going on in Katsuki's life, but he asked me not to. I had to respect that, and you will also give Katsuki the space he wishes for. Inko said sternly. Midoriya nodded quickly. Just then, Bakugou walked into the common room. The class was about to acknowledge his presence but stopped when they spotted the tear-stained cheeks, flattened hair, and lifeless complexion. Katsuki dear, how are you? Inko asked, masking her panic and sorrow. What's wrong? Bakugou asked, seeing right through her facade. Inko let out a grief-stricken sigh and gestured to the tables. Bakugou frowned and followed. Bakugou sat down and Inko placed the urn and her purse. I'll make us some tea. The letter is Masaru's will. We don't need a lawyer since we sent in that paperwork for the court a few months back. You're welcome to take a look at it, but you were there when he wrote it. Inko said as she stepped away and went into the kitchen. Bakugou just stared at the urn. A few minutes later Inko returned with 2 cups of tea. The class moved out of earshot, wanting to be as respectful as possible. Midoriya was vibrating from the impulse of joining the conversation, but he knew he wasn't welcome. What's going on? Bakugou asked once Inko sat down and took a sip of tea. Well, a few new things, but I don't want to stress you out. Inko said softly. Bakugou glared at her. Inko straightened up. She knew Bakugou deserved the full truth. Your mother is still in the wind. I spoke to her after I dropped you off Wednesday. I asked what she wanted to do with the house since she co-signed it. She doesn't know when she'll be back. I also spoke with the doctors earlier today. Inko began. Bakugou watched his tea carefully instead of looking at his aunt. I don't know how to say this, Katsuki, so I'm just going to be honest, Inko said, her voice laced with panic and worry. Bakugou looked up at her, bracing himself for whatever bad news was coming his way. According to the doctors, what Masaru had is genetic. Inko said. Bakugou heard the words, but his brain went blank and he couldn't comprehend what they meant. Wah! The doctors need you to take a DNA test so they could see if you have the cancer gene. They said that if you have the gene, then there's a huge chance that you already have cancer. Apparently, with each generation, cancer shows up earlier, about 15 years earlier. And if you do have it, they need to start treatments as quickly as possible, because once symptoms show up, The cancer is too far progressed to recover from. Inko explained. Bakugou dropped his jaw. That was too much information for him to process. I'm sorry, Katsuki. I'm so sorry. I wish I had better news, I do. Inko explained as she started crying. Bakugou just looked down at his trembling hands. First, his family fell apart, now potentially his entire life. After a long, tense minute, Bakugou stood up from his spot. He grabbed the urn, the will, and the DNA test and started towards the stairs leading to his dorm. Katsuki? Inko called after him. I'm going to bed. Bakugou said, voice emotionless and cold. He heard Inko let out a sob but didn't dare look back. Seeing the pity on her face made him sick. Seeing the pity on everyone's face made him sick. He was going to be sick. He was sick. It's getting bad again, and I don't know what to do, or where to go, or who to tell because nobody really cares. Right? He sees him everywhere he goes. Just out of the corner of his eyes, there he stands. Sometimes, Bakugou catches a glimpse of him in a crowd making him turn around only to see nothing. Sometimes, he's there cheering Bakugou on when he does something impressive in training. Sometimes through the roar of his classmates, he can hear him congratulating him. Other times, he's there early in the morning to wake him up so they can go on an adventure together. But wherever Bakugou sees him or hears him, he knows he's never really there. His father is gone. Dead. Diminished to a pile of ash in a metal urn with his name newly engraved onto his family's stone monument. He's never coming back. Bakugou knows that. He knows. But for some reason he can't stop himself from looking for his father wherever he goes. Bakugou hates it. He hates seeing his father's ghost. He knows he's gone, but the memories haunt him. He's haunted by his father from the photo album to the broken promises to the urn hidden in his closet. He sees him in his dreams, whispering words of forgotten wisdom, playing with his younger self, or lying dead in a hospital bed. He sees him when he looks in the mirror, sunken eyes, colorless skin, lifeless stare. He feels him under his skin, the same poison that killed his father, and his, pulsing through his body. A generational killer that's potentially marked Katsuki as its final kill. Bakugou's lost. He's angry, miserable, and confused. No matter how hard he tries to distract himself, he's constantly thinking about his father and the reality he's in. No amount of mind-numbing training or studying shuts out the world and the truth. Even fraternizing with the idiots who called themselves his friends doesn't help. The moment he stops thinking about his father is the moment he starts thinking about his death. Inko has been pestering him about taking the DNA test. All the scientists needed was just a swab of his cheek and some saliva to map his entire genome and determine his future. From there, he'll either be shipped off to the hospital, pumped full of radiation, and left to waste away in a back room, or he'll live to become the #1 hero and die sacrificing himself for his country. It was infuriating and pathetic. He has fallen behind in class. He's hardly sleeping, barely eating, and angrier than ever. His classmates try their best to give him space, but their stares of pity make him nauseous. He was Bakugou Katsuki, the beast of 1A. He shouldn't be so depressed over the death of a man he spent most of his life resenting. It was pitiful. He was crying over the death of his father, the man who abandoned him, the man who hurt him more than anyone else in the world. He hated his father, but now he was drowning because of how much he missed him. It's ridiculous. Bakugou wasn't sure which one was worse, dying from the thirst for justice or drowning under the waves of regret. All he did know was that he didn't know how to carry on. Hey Baku bro. Kirishima greeted happily as the blonde walked into class. Morning Kaken. Denki yelled from on top of Kirishima's desk. The self-proclaimed Baku squad was surrounding Kirishima's desk. The rest of the class was seated around, waiting for Aizawa to start class. Bakugou offered no acknowledgments to his friends, and went straight to his seat. He heard them whisper about how terrible he looked, how tired and dull he looked. Inko tells him that everyone in the class is extremely worried about him, but he still doesn't believe her. He knows they're making fun of him or worse, pitying him. Everyone's been treating him like a kid, and Bakugou hated it. They brought him food like he was incapable of making his own. They shared their answers to the assignments and went easy on him during training like he was weak. They walked on eggshells around him and treated him like a fragile little kid. He hated it. He wanted to explode them all, wipe those looks off their stupid faces, and show them that he's not something to coddle. The class went on, but Bakugou couldn't focus. He stared out the window and watched the memories that were constantly playing on a loop inside his mind. He and his father were playing tag in the park. He couldn't have been older than the sun was shining just like how it was outside UA. Bakugou swore that the birds he was watching were the same ones from that random day 12 years ago. The day he and his father ate watermelon on the grass and played for hours outside until they were caked in dirt and kissed by the sun. But that day has long ended, leaving Bakugou with only a bitter memory. Bakugou snapped out of his mind when the bell rang. He slowly pulled his things into his bag and slid out of his seat. Kirishima was waiting for him by the door, while the rest of their class hurried to their next class. Bakugou took one step towards the door when Mr. Aizawa intervened. "Bakugou, please stay after class," Aizawa said unemotionally as ever. Bakugou shot Kirishima a disinterested eye roll as he dropped his stuff and plopped back into his seat. Kirishima flashed him a sympathetic smile before darting off. "I know you are going through a lot right now. I also know how hard it is to cope with the death of a parent. We are all here if you need us. If you need to talk or if you're uncomfortable with that, I can recommend some great grief counselors. Hound Dog, the school guidance counselor, is also certified as a grief counselor. He is always available to you if you need to talk." Aizawa lectured with a softened glare. Bakugou hated that the most. Aizawa has always been the teacher to push students to their potential whether they were ready or not. That's what Bakugou respected most of the man. But now he was treating him like everyone else and it enraged him. Bakugou gave the pro only a scoff as a response. He was tired of having this conversation. Everyone was trying to get him to talk to some DMN shrink. What the hell was a shrink going to do? He already knew he was effed up, so there was no point in having it in writing. Aizawa continued talking about grief, therapy, and other things Bakugou tuned out. In the back of his mind spoke his father. "You've been through a lot, Cat. I think this will help you," Masaru said softly. He was trying to persuade 14-year-old Katsuki to talk to the school counselor about the sludge villain. "Please just give it a try. You can talk about whatever you please," Masaru begged. He was met with an unstable teen who knew better than to talk about everything that he's been through. It was Masaru, after all, who taught him to lie. "Bakugou, are you even listening?" Aizawa's sharp voice cut through. Bakugou blinked back into reality, only to find himself still under Aizawa's gaze. The pro-hero let out a long and tired sigh before studying the boy once more. "You can take as much time as you need, but Bakugou, I can't help you if you're unwilling to help yourself," Aizawa explained. Bakugou had no idea what he was talking about, nor did he care. "You're free to go," Aizawa held out a pass. "But please remember that you don't have to go through this alone. Everyone is here for you. Me, the teachers, your classmates, and your friends. You aren't alone," Aizawa explained softly. Bakugou glared at him and bit his bottom lip to hold back his raging lungs. He snatched the pass aggressively and stomped out of the class. Throughout the day, Bakugou tried his best to focus on his classes just to spite everyone. He didn't need to talk about his feelings, and definitely didn't need anyone looking down on him. 3 weeks have passed since his father's death. Less since he found out he could be next. He needed to stop falling so far behind. People die. Friends die. Strangers die. Heroes die. Parents die. It's inevitable. So what if Bakugou might waste away before he's 20? He'll probably die from a villain before then anyway. Sure, Bakugou used to think he was invincible and going to live forever. He also used to think his mother would love him. Things change. Kids grow up. Parents die. So why did it hurt so much? Bakugou couldn't take it. He tried all day to snap back to the way he was. He tried to be angry at his classmates for annoying him. He tried to focus on what his teachers were lecturing, and he tried to cook dinner for himself. But all he managed to do was swipe the sake Aizawa got him to cook with a few months back. Now, he was laying on his floor, drunk for the first time. He just wanted a break from everything, but he felt even worse than before. He couldn't understand why his parents loved getting drunk so much. Bakugou! Kirishima called out as he pushed the door open. Bakugou just tilted his head back to see Kirishima, Mina, Kaminari, Siro, and Jiro in his doorway. It's Friday. Hangout day. We're all meeting in Kirishima's room. We texted the group chat, but you never responded. Mina explained softly. Bakugou chuckled softly before returning his teary gaze to the ceiling. He felt bad for ignoring his friends. He felt bad for how badly he treated them, treated everyone. Maybe if he was nicer things wouldn't have turned out so deplorable. A few tears slipped out as Bakugou continued to lay in his puddle of self-destruction and pity. Are you drunk? Jiro asked. Yeah, Bakugou breathed out. And it's terrible. Just terrible. Everything is just terrible. He heard his friends whispering, presumably trying to figure out what to do with him. Why'd you even get drunk, Blasty? You know UA will kick you out. Mina asked. Thought it'll make things better. Bakugou said honestly. He was too tired to lie or hold his tongue. Come on, dude. I know you're going through a lot, but you have to know that there are better ways to cope than throwing your career away. Get up. This isn't what your dad would have wanted. Jiro pushed. Kaminari whined. The F, you know about my father? Besides, he's the only one I had to disappoint. So what's the point? I'm just doing what my mother would do. Everyone said I'll be just like her. Bakugou slurred. I'm everything they said I'll be. Bakufo whispered as he reached up to the ceiling to stare at his hand. Oh baby, Mina said softly. Bakugou sat up quickly, making him a little nauseous. I'm not a baby. I never was and I never will be. God, I'm so sick of everyone treating me like a child. Bakugou yelled. His friends flinched back. It's been a while since they heard him raise his voice. I know. I'm sorry. Mina said as she looked at the others for backup. We're all sorry, Bakugou-Kirishima stepped in. No. Stop it. Bakugou yelled as he gripped his hair. Stop looking at me like that. Do you hear me? Stop looking at me like that. Bakugou screamed with his whole heart as more tears fell. His friends were silent as they watched the strongest among them crumble further. I am not a tragedy for you to gawk at. I'm fine. It's not like I didn't know he would leave me again. I don't care. I hate him. You don't know what he did to me. You don't know. That motherfucker just dropped dead before I could F-I-N-G. Bakugou just broke. His throat was on fire, his hands were cold, and tears rolled down his face. Bakugou dropped down to his knees and hugged his stomach as he wailed. He screamed and screamed and screamed some more. It was all too much. Everything was just too much. He wasn't surprised when he smelled burning flesh and felt the sting against his sides. He was surprised, however, when Kirishima pulled his hands away and hugged him. Just let it out. Let it all out. Kirishima whispered. The demon continued to break as Bakugou clutched the back of Kirishima's shirt and screamed out a rotten sob. I hate him. I hate him so much. He gave up on me. He left me all alone. And then he came back into my life knowing full well that he couldn't stay. And I let him. God, I was so stupid. Why couldn't I just stay mad at him? Why did I have to let him? Why does this hurt so much? Why does it hurt? Bakugou sobbed quietly. It's okay, Kirishima whispered as he hugged Bakugou tightly and cradled his head. I've got you. Childhood is this. You suffer, you hate, you forget. You forget what it was, but you never forget how it felt. You still hate and you still hunger for revenge. You didn't think you would feel this way. I've changed, but not into something better. I'm haunted by feelings of things I can't remember, but what would I be without the ghosts? The opposite of a haunting is something very lonely.